For June 7th to order, and we will stand for a moment of silent reflection, Pledge of Allegiance, and then Ken Davis will make an announcement.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just quickly, in a moment of personal privilege, if I might, and it's not on the agenda, but we have over on the corner of the desk right here, there's some of these booklets, and they're the remembrance and then renewal of the 1972 flood, and they're available to anybody that wants one there. I won't go through the whole thing, but in the centerfold there's a complete list of all of the things that are happening on the 9th and the 10th locally and at the Civic Center. And please go out to commemorate the flood and the victims that lost their lives in the flood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Next item is to review and approve the agenda. The first portion of the agenda is the consent calendar, and then we go on to other items. Does anyone wish to have any items added to or withdrawn from the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remove item 14, please. Item
14 from the consent calendar. Requested removal. Any others?
That's no big deal. I just don't want to go on.
Make a motion to approve the agenda excluding item 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda excluding item 14 from the consent calendar. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we have the consent calendar, and that's items 5 through 20, and I'm going to ask Holly Hennis, our office manager, to read the agenda into the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the Board. They may be removed from the consent agenda at any time. Today, I have placed the following 15 items on the consent agenda. Minutes of the regular meeting from May 1st, which was pulled for further review. Minutes of the regular meeting from May 15th. Minutes of the special budget meeting from May 22nd. Approval of the vouchers. Approval of the malt beverage license renewals. Order for organization and incorporation of the Mansfield Road District. Order for organization and incorporation of the Sela Place Road District, an order for election for the Deer Creek Lane Road District. We have a request for authorization to bid for the evidence building equipment package, request for approval of the, we removed item 14. Item 15, request for authorization to bid for pages from the Fire Service Board. Request to declare equipment surplus, a port account plus system from the Fire Service Board. Request approval of the application for an Adopt a Highway program for a portion of Highway 1416 by the 28 CPTS of the Ellsworth Air Force Base. We have a request for authorization to purchase from Highway for tires and tubes off of the state contract list. Request for approval of the Black Hills National Forest Cooperative Road Agreement from Highway. And finally, a request for authorization from the Rochford Volunteer Fire District to hold an annual raffle during their annual fundraiser.
Thank you, Holly. Any further discussion about the consent calendar agenda? Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda minus item 14.
Second.
Motion is second to approve items 5 through 20, absent item 14. Any discussion from the audience? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 21.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Number 14. I made a motion to remove that because my wife works for the Guard and was involved in the preparation of the contract, I think, and so I would just soon abstain from the vote on that.
Okay, I'd make a motion to approve item 14.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Does anyone wish to counter Commissioner Buskerud's position? Take him to task?
Mr. Chair, I'm just the opposite. I don't think he has a conflict of interest voting on it, and I think that he should be allowed to do so without any reprimand.
Comfortable?
Well, I'll vote on it. I'm going to still vote I'm going to abstain.
That's your choice. Just remember, if you abstain, that's a yes vote.
The only reason I'm doing this is since you went to the trouble of taking it off, we
That's right.
fared quite well.
I appreciate Commissioner Davis's response.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Or
carried.
abstain, sorry. After all that, I voted anyway.
Well, since you're on a roll, we'll ask you to address item 21, which is on the regular agenda.
We have here today Chris from the South Dakota Association to give away some scholarships. I don't know if you got one or two. Yeah, and she can explain a little bit more about it. She can do a better job of explaining it than I can, I'm sure. Chris Jacobson.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name, as you heard, is Chris Jacobson, and I am pleased to be here to award several presentations to some Pennington County students. There was actually several that came from the Black Hills District, actually, one up in Lawrence County, but today we have 2 scholarships here in Pennington County. We have Janet Saylor that is with the SDACO Scholarship Committee, and this morning we awarded Stevie Wessel, who is studying pharmacy. She received the SDACO $1,000 scholarship, and her mom Lori is here in the audience, and so that was good work for her. Stevie also received the $500 scholarship from the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners. Elena Ackerman, who is in the audience this morning with her mother Monica, received also a scholarship from the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners, and that was a $1,000 scholarship, and she is studying economics and criminal justice. I don't know how you guys want to handle presenting her the certificate. If you want to do a photo later, how would you like to proceed?
You're in charge, Commissioner.
That's why you got that highly elected and overpaid position of being on the board.
I have a
The 2012 South Dakota Association of County Commissioners Scholarship to Elena Ackerman. And most important thing is $2,000 check. Are you sure you want to take a picture of me?
For $1,000, of course.
Chris, do you want your picture in there? So maybe
Sure, get in there.
Really? Okay.
I think you should probably do
Who's,
Fancy.
very good.
Whatever. Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you. And thank you for letting us take the time.
And you did the other one?
Stevie was awarded hers this morning. She had to go to work this morning, and so she was here earlier. So thank you very much.
Congratulations to her.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out from here. Mr. Chair, if I might, we have a gentleman in the back of the room, State Attorney-elect Mark Bargo. I'd like to introduce him if you could, in the back.
Good morning.
Welcome. Next item on the agenda is item 22, the Pennington County Resource Advisory Committee Projects Update. Mr. Bob Thompson.
I thought you were retiring.
Actually, I'm not retiring, but I am changing jobs at the end of next week. And I'll no longer be district ranger on the Mystic Ranger District. I'll be doing work advising on geology and mining operations throughout the West for the Forest Service. I get to stay right here in Rapid City in order to do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You've done a great job over the years, and you worked well with the county.
Thank you, sir. What I wanted to talk about today was just kind of an update on, we've had several discussions in the past about the Secure Rural Schools Act, which right now is kind of in limbo. There is no act that replaced the last one. I keep hearing rumors that there's things going on in Congress to look at re-upping that in some way. And as the commissioners know, there's a fair amount of money that comes to the county for roads and schools. There's also a piece that comes in what's called Title III, and that's used for Firewise and various other programs that affect national forests as well as private land. And then there's a piece, what's called Title II. Those are funds that come in that the Forest Service manages, but there's a committee that was put together in order to look at how to expend those funds. Resource Advisory Committee, it's about 15 members from all walks of life. And folks worked on that, and I just wanted to give the commission a quick update and just see if you had any questions. I know you got a busy agenda here. So we had a number of projects that we dealt everything from roads and trails, mountain pine beetle, leafy spurge, weed spraying, campground spraying for mountain pine beetle, some recreation projects, put in a boat ramp at Deerfield, and a fishing access at Sheridan Lake right along Highway 385. An interpretive project dealing with a gold mill that was rehabilitated to be meant for tourists and locals to be able to go out and see a little bit of history from the Black Hills. Spring development, putting in a culvert to deal with some road issues and the like. So I had sent that to you earlier. I assume you had a chance to look at that. And just all the projects are moving on. We have until the end of September this year to either expend the funds or to lock them up in some kind of an agreement, such as with the county or under contract. There were two pieces of this that we worked directly with the county on. One of them is leafy spurge spraying, which would be on public but mostly private land. And the other one was marking for mountain pine beetle kind of along the property boundaries between private and national forests so that we could have some coordinated efforts. Scott Guffey with the county coordinated those projects and proposed.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So what will happen if there is not funding restored as far as the RAC? Will it just dissolve if we do not get more funding renewed?
Yes, if the bill doesn't come about and include a RAC in it, then the RAC would be dissolved. Okay. Right now, they're kind of in limbo. They don't really have a function, which is a shame because they did great work and really showed a lot of interest in trying to manage the forest and associated private lands and so. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Very much, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Next item on the agenda is the Pennington County Fairgrounds Crack Seal and Seal Coat Project. And I don't see Mr. Jeffries here, but Holly can fill us in.
The board awarded the contract to basically redo the fairgrounds last year. Mr. Jeffries contacted me regarding the contract. It was supposed to be completed by June 15th. However, the scheduling issues, they were not able to meet that deadline. So I put Mr. Jeffries in touch with Buildings and Grounds Director Mike Peterson. The result is an extension to that signed by Mr. Jeffries and the contractor that it now will be completed next month in July. They didn't want to displace the Golden Coyotes and some other important events happening at the fairgrounds. So just more of an informational piece for the board.
Do we need a motion to accept?
I would request that, please.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the extension of the crack seal contract?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So to the best of your knowledge, because I don't imagine you've been out there,
No, sir.
this is, we're basically requesting the extension, not them.
This is at our doing, not the contractors. That's why there will be no penalties.
That's fine.
Nothing will change monetarily.
Any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carried. Items from the auditor. We're a minute and a half late.
That's the closest I think I've ever seen it.
You run a meeting well. First item on the agenda is a posted hearing on the general fund Title III Mountain Pine Beetle budget for $32,006. And it is Mr. Scott Guffey is here if you have any specific questions on that.
Actually, I think it's Title II, isn't it?
Pilt 2?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the first one's Title II and the second one's Title III.
Yeah.
So that A is Title II.
A is Title II, sorry. Yes. Mistake
So
on the
the
agenda.
Title II designation would be for item A.
Yes, to cover the implementation of the mountain pine beetle suppression project.
Yeah, and our agenda shows item 3 and
Title III.
Or Title
yes,
III,
but
yeah.
the letter shows Title II.
correct.
I'm going to make a motion to supplement the 2012 general fund mountain pine beetle budget in the amount of $32,006 from non-budgeted revenue received in the current year.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
We next have the addition of the canvas for the election, and I have some stats here for you. We've ran our final precinct through at 9:17. We closed out loading to ST25 about 10:30. We received requests for 2729 absentee ballots. We actually had 2369 returned. We had 3 provisional ballots, none of them were counted, and we had 189 people use our illustrious auto marks.
So how many did we have sent out of the absentee ballots?
We had 2,729 sent out, and we counted 2369.
So we had 400 and some that they weren't returned after they were requested to be sent out, and
Yes.
so just so the taxpayers know, we spent a lot of money in postage that they didn't turn their ballots back in.
We will get some of them today, but they're too late to open and count. We had 14 what we call have-a ballots or move ballots, and those are military or their dependents can receive a ballot through an email process, and then they print it off and return it to us, and we had 14 of those. So we are trying to serve our military better. We had a 12,764 ballots cast. That was 20.71% of the voter turnout, and 0.10 of those were blank, which means they've gone to the polls and submitted a completely blank ballot. What we need today is the motion to approve the official Pennington County canvass of the primary election held on Tuesday, June 5th, 2012, and further move to authorize payment of all election expenses as listed. Salaries, $23,875. Rent, $830. Travel, $1,516.54. And utilities of $350. And what those utilities are renting of cell phones. And I have the certificate that I'll pass around that I need to send into the state.
So how many votes were there cast?
12,760.
And it cost us about, what, $25,000, $2 a vote?
Oh, no, it's higher than that. That's just salaries.
Okay.
With this poor of a
We have
turnout,
a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second
Yeah.
it so you can go.
yeah.
Okay, now.
We'll
go ahead,
get you that
Mr.
cost once we get all that salaries is just for the election boards. It doesn't include any of the salaries for us. It doesn't include the ballot stock's already been paid. We can reach up to $8 a ballot.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
maybe now is not the time to get on my soapbox, but I do have a couple of things to say. And that the United States of America, since basically its founding, has lost 1,308,000 men and women in uniform to protect that right to vote. And we have that many people that didn't return their ballots and that many people that put in a blank ballot. The only thing I can say is, how stupid can you get?
Any other comments or questions? Does the secretary have the text of the motion? Are you comfortable with it? Any other comments? If not, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. The next is the new retail on-off sale malt beverage and new on-off sale wine licenses as attached on the May 18th, 2012 memo. Caputa General Store, Johnny's Billiards and Arcade, and the Flying T Chuck Wagon. Applications as requested by the state are attached. Motion needs to approve these licenses.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Just to be clear, Holly, I assume these marks are the pink and the green marks?
Correct, because when the letter came back from the sheriff's office, the new and the renewals were together.
Right. And then there's a note here that the renewals were on the consent calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's understood. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item on the agenda is the renewal of the license of the Sugar Shack. We received comments back from the planning office, the zoning office, that there were zoning issues. I understand they were in court yesterday, and Patrick has that resolved for you before you make the decision whether you renew it or not.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We've resolved the court case. I don't think they would have been in court yesterday. They weren't. But we do have a resolution of the court case, and we've got an agreement worked out where, and then over the course of the next few months, they're going to resolve the issues. The main issues had to do with the setback violation and insufficient parking. They may also have septic issues. I don't know about that right now, but the setback and the parking, we have an agreement where they're going to get that resolved. Dan Jennison is on vacation right now. He had submitted that comment, but I guess from my perspective, I don't think that there's any reason at this point to deny the malt beverage license based on zoning violations, because we do have a resolution.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the Sugar Shack's application for the renewal of their license.
Is there a second?
It's your turn to second.
No, I'm gonna vote against it. I'm not gonna vote. Don't vote.
All right, I'll second it.
Motion and a second to approve the renewal, the Sugar Shack malt beverage license. Any further discussion?
I just have one thing, Mr. Chairman, is I'll vote in favor of this, because if you got it resolved fine, except they've been working on it for over a year now, and they haven't done anything yet.
That's true, Commissioner. And I guess that makes it frustrating for me. On the other hand, I mean, in their favor, I do have to say that Mr. Johnston didn't create the zoning issues. He inherited them, but it has been going on for quite a while, and I anticipate that we'll probably have further trouble with them if they don't get it resolved, but I think that they are committed to doing it at this point.
I will trust that.
Thank you, Patrick.
And give them one more chance. Because there's going to be a new sheriff in town.
Well, Mr. Chair, since that came up, I guess I have to say that I never was a fan of holding people hostage and their right to make a livelihood hostage in order to dissolve a legal issue with Pennington County or any other government entity.
Any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item is Title III funds. We have old money and we have new money. And each entitlement has different requirements or expectations of what we can spend the money on. And we're trying to spend the money down, especially the old money, which this motion will do. What we need to do today is to reallocate or approve the previously budgeted Title III search and rescue budget in the amount of $20,000 come from the prior 2008 available fund balance rather than the new money. So that's what that motion does, as the type of expenditure that is on is not allowed under the new money, but it is under the old. And with that motion then, and the other items budgeted already for the old money, that will bring that balance of the old money down to zero by the end of 2012. So this is a reallocation, the motion from the new money to the old.
I think that it's the new money that we have to bring down by September, not the old. The old we can keep and use, but the new money is what we have to bring down by the end of September.
Yeah. KJ's out of town. KJ's been the one who we've been working with, and it's the new that we have to have spent by September 30th, so. That's why we're doing the moving around.
Okay,
yeah.
That's the line. I'm sorry, that is the line. I don't know the brackets very well.
It's
Sorry.
very confusing. Don't worry.
You know, it's those little arrow things, and I get those mixed up, so I apologize. That
No,
is
it
correct.
just- it's just
So that will
confusing.
be spent in time. So that's the first motion that we need, which is a reallocation. Motion to schedule a hearing at 9:15 on Tuesday, June 19th to supplement the 2012 Title III Mountain Pine Beetle in the amount of $143,441.90 from restricted fund balance. 112 is coming from 2008 and $31,441.90 on the after 2008, which is the new money. And that will be supplement 12-017.
So we have two separate motions that we need to
Yes.
address.
You can address them in one, but they were separated out for ease of understanding.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I
Yield.
think we should do it separately because we don't want to get, it's so confusing with the Title II, or the
Right.
new Title III and the old Title III monies that I think we should keep that separate.
That's fine.
Yeah. So then I would move to approve the previously budgeted 2012 Title III monies for search and rescue budget in the amount of $20,000 to come from the old Title III money, because we schedule it out of the new.
We scheduled it out of the new, and you can't buy equipment out of the
Right.
new.
So I'm going to change that just a little bit because I'm not sure we would understand later what that meant. Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Since the sheriff is here and he has the search and rescue under him at this time, under his office, It says here that allows the search and rescue the ability to purchase some necessary equipment with these funds. What is the necessary equipment? And we're sure spending a lot of money in search and rescue all of a sudden. I think we got about $140,000 in new vehicles and.
Sure. The, previously when it was budgeted, we discussed some of these things, but, we're looking at fire clothing, which runs about $6,500. We looked at putting, these are just some different options that we're looking at. Some money towards, again, a different vehicle replacement next year, just to be a portion of that. Possibly some maintenance or replacing one of the ATVs. And then we looked at some computer equipment to help with our mapping when they go out and do searches to augment the GIS. Like, for example, the most recent stuff up at Deerfield. And the way I understand this money is it has to be for work that's done on the Forest Service property. So again, using this search that's going on at Deerfield, I think we figured out we have about $18,000 in billable time of search and rescue's time that we can charge against this to get the money out of the Title III funds.
Any further discussion?
Will the ATV and the vehicle and things, will that come up for bid, or are they just going to buy those outright because the money is already allocated?
The vehicle would have to come through here, the ATV, depending upon the dollar amount, and may or may not come through here. The smaller ticket items like a computer or some clothing, wouldn't come forward for approval first.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Second motion.
The second motion needed is to schedule a hearing at 9:15 on Tuesday, June 19th to supplement the 2012 Title III Mountain Pine Beetle budget in the amount of $143,441.90. 112 of that to come from the old money, $31,441.90 to come in the new money.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Schedule a hearing for June 19th. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Tome, item 25. 25A.
KJ did a motion with the,
Yep.
I'll have Julie help me with this one too, but I'll give you some background, but it's also a supplement request, and it's regarding 24/7. As you know, we've been nomadic with that program, trying to find a more permanent home. Recently, the city purchased the old Dakota Supply Group building, which is just north of the post office, and in discussions with the city and the fire department, they've agreed to lease us a portion of that to house the 24/7 program, which is generous of them on their part, and we're in the process of working up a draft lease with the city attorney's office. They've talked up to about a 10-year lease, which is good, because if we put a significant investment in to renovate some of the space, it gives us time to recapture that investment. We've been down to the building with Mike and Mike from Buildings and Grounds. We've taken Gene Fennell down there to help us lay out the design and give us some cost estimates. And based on the research we've done with all of them, this supplement would help us get into the facility and start operating the 24/7 program out of there. The other component to this is I've said we'll allow public comment on any new home we find. So I figured that would fall between the first reading of the supplement and the second reading of the supplement to see if there's any consternation from citizens or businesses in that area. Would certainly bring that feedback to the commission at the reading of the second reading of the supplement. And so with that, I guess if you have any questions regarding it, I'd certainly answer them. I think it's a good fit. It'd be nice to have a more permanent home for a while. It's close to our other office location here. It's close to the jail, which frankly we transport back and forth from 24/7 from time to time. And it's centrally located, so it works well for the participants in the program, which I think is important.
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Do you think you can do this all for 57.5?
That's our goal. I mean, based on the discussion with Mike and Mike.
And that comes
I
out
think-
of a restricted budget that we have to use for that anyway.
Yes.
There's
We
about,
got more than that in there.
I think there's about 190 or 200,000 in that fund. And the Attorney General gave us an additional 30,000 this last year to use towards either purchase or renovation of space because he knew we were looking for something.
I would have to really support this because I think that program saves us that much money in a relatively short amount of time, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I might, and just to get it out to the public so the public has the information, but which building or which part of the building that we're going to remodel with the money that we're allocating?
Sure, it's the office area. There's a set of steps that'd be on the south side of the building. There's the only set of steps there, and it's the office area, kind of in the, if you look at the span of the whole building, it's about dead center.
Okay, and we're looking at spending about $50,000 in there on the remodel of that portion of that building. What will the monthly rent be after that approximately? Do you have an idea yet?
Again, still working on a draft lease. We've talked of roughly around $1,000.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions or comments? Mike, are you? Thumbs up, okay.
The motion we are requesting today is to schedule a hearing at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, June 19th, 2012 for a supplement to the 2012 24/7 fund operating budget in the amount of $57,500 from restricted fund balance.
That's my motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 26, items from equalization.
Good morning. You have two abatement requests. Item A is Tyrell Carson. It's a mobile home that was destroyed by fire last year, 2 years ago. And the abatement is for the 2011 assessment.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? This has to be a record, Shannon. First time no one has had any discussion about you standing there.
The next one is the fun one.
Oh, okay. We'll take care of this one first. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
This is that one.
Item B.
Another abatement request. The mobile home abatement was a abatement request that was completed by my office. This next one here is a request from the property owner. And I think the property owner might be here. The city attorney is here and will want to say something. Now, I've included a summary of the circumstance that led up to it, and I won't go over that if you've already read it. There's also a letter from the city attorney. Given the assumption that you know the situation, the only comment I would have to add is, as I talked to Jay Alderman last week, he says that the abatement statute will allow the commission to grant a full abatement on this request, or a partial abatement, which was my recommendation to the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You know, Shannon, I said on the equalization hearings when this came before us in April.
Slightly different
can you help me
circumstance.
with
That equalization, we made we did the same action on the building for 2012, pay 2013. This is a request for 2011.
I thought we were really fair then, and it.
Well, we did 1 year. This is the previous year. The Board of Equalization did the current year. This is the previous year, which couldn't be done until we have a tax bill now.
I understand that, but certainly we were very fair in helping with that so it kind of bothers me.
Mr. Chairman,
Far back
Yeah.
in
it
the-
says no deed transferring ownership has yet been given to the city.
Yeah,
What's going on? Is it just they're lazy and not doing it, or is there another underlying reason that they're not doing it?
Better answered by the property owner, but it's my understanding that the property owner would like to see the tax issue resolved before the deed is transferred.
Well, that may not happen.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sheriff, how much a month did you say the city was charging us for rent?
A suggestion might be to grant an abatement request on the condition that the deed transfers, because technically the property is in private ownership at present.
And technically, I'm not sure that it's, that according to state law, we can give a tax abatement to someone who owns some property that's legally taxable.
That's why maybe granting on the condition that the deed transfers would solve that issue.
so if we did something like that, Shannon, would, I mean, we've got the November 1st deadline. Would we put a deadline on that it has to be transferred by a certain time? Would that, I mean, we couldn't go on forever and ever doing, they get it done in 2 years versus,
The abatement request, the abatement request would be dependent upon time, because the longer you go, the more taxes would accrue and the late penalty and all that. I would assume that it would happen quickly, but yeah, if it took a year, then it'd be a different situation.
that's my concern, if we did it that way.
The odd thing about this situation is that the property owner is not responsible for the property taxes. The property is. So the problem of the tax bill would transfer from FMLC to the city if a deed were to transfer. If I own a property that owes taxes and I sell it to you, now the property you own owes taxes.
So we could theoretically take away that property for tax deed and own a piece of property that the city has a fire station on.
That's right, yes. That's the problem situation we're in right now.
We could charge them $1,000 a month, I think you said, to have that fire station on there.
You would have a very nice home for 24/7.
There we go. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Patrick, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're studying hard there. But I don't believe, and I'm not an attorney by any means, but I don't believe that we could forego or forgive taxes that are already in arrears on private property, the taxes that owed on the property. I can understand the new portion and put a hitch to it maybe that the deed transfers, but this tax is already in arrears.
Yeah, and I have to apologize, Commissioner Davis, that's not a question I can answer right now. I can certainly
I can.
look. Can you? Great.
Well, you're not an attorney by any means, and I'm not going to take that recommendation.
The property is made up of two parts, building and land. The building is actually city-owned property on a leased site. So the building, my recommendation was to grant an abatement request for the value of the building, because the building is city property.
How do you know that?
When they entered into this mess, there was a lease agreement for $1 to put the building on the property until the deed transferred.
You've seen that agreement? You've had it in your house,
No,
land? And
but I have no reason to believe that it's not true as it was told to me.
Anything to add, Joel, to this mess?
Go ahead.
don't you feel like slogging starts at 2:30 this afternoon?
Well, and thank you for those of you who have never met me. I am Joel Landine. I'm the city attorney. I do have a copy of the lease agreement in my file if you'd care to see it, but this is a mess. What really happened is the fire department was ready to move forward with the fire station, and the liens and I should say FMLC, Julie Lean, who is the president of FMLC, is present in the audience today. They generously offered to give us this fire station site. There were some issues with getting the public improvements completed in conjunction with the platting and being able to move forward in the time frame the fire department wanted to move forward. So they agreed to enter into this lease. Unfortunately, the lease was entered into in early August of 2009. The final plat wasn't approved until the end of June of 2010, and in the intervening 8 months, apparently someone dropped the ball and it just didn't ever get transferred. As far as not transferring it yet, I believe the parties would like to get a resolution to the tax, because if you don't abate it, money is going to need to be paid, and we need to discuss who's going to make that payment. Just talking to Shannon yesterday, found out, and I hadn't really thought about it because frankly we don't deal with property taxes all that much, so it's kind of a new area for us, but that if it was transferred, we would be responsible for it. I think prior to that, the belief of FMLC was that if it was transferred, they would still be responsible for that, so they wanted to have the issue addressed prior to transfer. Based on the fact that they donated this property to us and have been so frankly generous in working with us to make sure that we had our fire station when we needed it, I have no doubt that they would transfer that very quickly. At this point, really all we need to do is prepare a quick claim deed, have them sign it, and transfer the property over. And it shouldn't take too long to get that accomplished. I'll agree for 2012, it's already gone through the equalization process, so we wouldn't have this problem next year. I imagine it reduced by taking the structure off the tax bill quite a bit, and we'll probably just end up paying that. And if that's the route you wanted to go down for this, I think we would be all right with that. We were asking for a total abatement, but we also recognize that we had a hand in creating this problem, and we're sorry for any inconvenience caused, but ultimately it's the taxpayers that are probably going to be paying this bill, so we're just trying to take care of this problem and solve it. And if we can get this done, then we can transfer the title and we won't have this problem going on into the future. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. I can answer, and I know I'm not your attorney, but when we looked at it, and I think based on the discussion that Shannon had with Jay Alderman at the time, the SDCL 1018 1.1 states that time allowed for abatement or refund of invalid, inequitable, or unjust tax. If the Board of County Commissioners is satisfied beyond a doubt that the assessment of real property described in an application for abatement or refund under the provisions of 1018.1 is invalid, inequitable, or unjust, the Board, if application is filed no later than the first day of November of the 4th year after which such taxes would have become delinquent, may abate or refund any part thereof in excess of a just, fair, and equitable assessment, if such application for correction complies with the requirements for this chapter. And that is what we're applying under.
But just go ahead and read the three stipulations there again: invalid, unjust, or inequitable. It's none of those.
Well, I don't know that I would agree with that. I don't think it's invalid. I mean, that it was in the name of a private party, so I wouldn't argue it was invalid. But based on the circumstances that, frankly, the legal owners of the property haven't had possession of the property since 2009, and there's a city fire station on it that everyone's in agreement we've been in control of since that time, I think you could make the argument that the assessment, therefore, is inequitable or unjust, because ultimately if the bill needs to be paid, it's the taxpayers again that are going to pay it. And the Board of Equalization seemed to recognize that and at least took off the value of the structure in the assessment, which is clearly city property because the structure itself is owned by the city and it's on the land based on a lease.
Okay, so that was done for what, this year?
That was done for the 2012 taxes payable in
Now we're back to 2011. My motion is going to be the same thing, to take it off of the building and leave it on the land.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is that, I'm thinking that's maybe a little simpler than we need for the record. Your statement.
I'm a simple kind of guy, Lindell.
I'll bet you she can handle it.
Okay.
I'm doing that just because I think it's right. That if we charge it, the taxpayers are going to end up with it. If we end up with a tax deed on it and the city owes us taxes, we can't go do anything about it. We can't go take the building and land back, so they don't probably ever have to pay us. So we just well see if we can get a little bit out of them.
Any comment?
No, I thank you for your motion, and I think that's very fair, and I think we can get it taken care of at that point and get the land transferred so we don't have to deal with this again in the future. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Yeah, no sense of taking it from one back there and putting it.
Next item from the Highway Department, the Palmer Gulch Road. Mr. Jungi.
Good morning.
Morning.
I basically just wanted to bring you up to speed on the Palmer Gulch Road. The Palmer Gulch Road District has reconstructed that portion of road through the forest that's within their boundaries and that Pennington County has a easement on. The National Forest has inspected the work. They've approved it. I inspected the roadway. It looks good to me, and I told them that the Highway Department would approve it. The other portion of the road that still goes through private property where there's a public access easement, some minor little improvements were made in a couple spots. Some trees were cut. It still is one lane in a lot of areas with no ditches and no drainage. So I know this was a contentious issue for quite a while, and I just wanted to give you a report and see what you'd like to do. If you'd want to drive the road and take a look at it first, but I think Palmer Gulch Road District has done a very good job. I also received an email from the Road District this morning. They couldn't attend the meeting today. They were both out of town, but they are asking for the commissioners to pass a resolution establishing a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit on that portion of road within Palmer Gulch Road District boundaries. There is a couple laws that says a road district needs to ask the county commissioners to set the speed limit what they desire. They've asked for 15. Personally, I like to reserve 15 mile an hour for school zones and school crossings. I think that's about the only time we can get people to really pay attention to a 15 mile an hour sign. I think maybe 20 or 25 would be more appropriate, but I know Palmer Gulch Road District stated in public that they would set a 15 mile an hour speed zone, and that's what they're doing. So I guess the other part of my question would be, would the commissioners, it has to be done by resolution, so if the commissioners so direct, I will prepare a resolution for your next meeting establishing a 15 if that's your desire, as the road district requested. So with that, I'll be quiet, and whatever you would like to do or let it go. And
Mr. Chair, Heidi, do we know if the private landowners have it's just beginning the summer season, do they have further plans? I know Doyle is here.
I don't know. I guess I haven't talked to them. I just basically inspected the road, what's been done, and based my report on that. So okay. I have not talked to any of the private landowners. So, but I know Doyle's here, so he might be able to address your questions.
Morning.
Good morning. Doyle Estes here as one of the property owners of the land between Old Hill City Road and the campground. The gentleman says we did some minor expenditures. We spent about $10,000, so maybe that's minor to him, but it's kind of a big number to me. And what we did is broaden out the shoulders. We took out some trees. We made it more accessible for visibility so you can see the vehicles coming through there. And I will also point out that the legislature heard our concerns about road districts in putting their will on private property owners, and they've changed the state law effective July 1st, saying that road districts cannot go and do work on private property owners without those private property owners' consent. So I'm asking you folks to, again, recognize the private property owners' rights in this. This is the public access easement I respect Mr. Alderman's, he's a fine lawyer. We don't share the same opinion as he does as to whether the county can enforce, do work in a public access easement, which we have here. We still own the property under the road. If the campground wants a improved driveway to their property, and I call it a driveway because the road between Old Hill City Road and 244 does not go through the campground. So the road that would go through us, through the Forest Service, stops at the campground. There's not a public road through the campground. If the campground is hell-bent on making a better road, and they have done a nice road down there through the Forest Service, and it's graveled and that, we never agreed to do any graveling. We agreed to make it wider, clean out the visibility. But if they're hell-bent to make a better road like they did through the Forest Service, Mr. Zlepnikoff for the Forest Service indicated that he thought the Forest Service would be willing to allow that same type of improvement through that road that runs north on the west side of our property. So they could make a nice road through there if they wanted without violating our rights, our objections. We ask our objections to the road be, again, recognized. We have no further plans at this time in answer to your question, Ms. Troutman.
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple more questions. So Doyle, if they did go off to the north and go, if they do take that other route, going up the other way, would you, how would you regulate keeping people from going down into your private area then? I mean, would it be an issue because people are used to going that way?
It's a public access easement, and 15 miles an hour is fine with me. But I suspect Sheriff Thome has other priorities on his law enforcement budget as opposed to posting someone down there to drive to regulate speed on a driveway to the campground. So we're not trying to restrict traffic, Nancy, but we don't want to make it a thoroughfare to bring more traffic. When we bought the property, we wanted a nice, quiet area. And if you look what they did on this land south of us, only a fool would think that's not going to encourage faster travel.
I guess for me, and I think I've said this from the beginning, one of the big concerns, and I did drive your road when we went through the evacuation exercise a few weeks ago, it's a safety thing. And probably if I were personally living there, some of you that are living further in, if we have emergency vehicles going and people trying to get everywhere, I think you, as an individual property owner, are going to have a hard time getting out of there if there's an emergency. And I wonder if you've thought of that, because it's a very difficult, it's going to be very difficult if there's a fire there, and there could be.
There are 3 private property owners in there. Only one is there 12 months a year. That's me and my wife. And we've been there for 9 years. We don't have any concerns about that. The other 2 property owners, they're there, they have cabins there. One's an old cabin built in the 1880s. One's one about 8 years old. They are opposed to your idea. They are not concerned as you are. I can tell you this, they are opposed to having that road widened like they did on the Forest Service. I guarantee you that.
And I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying, when I drove that road, I'm thinking, wow, getting in and out of here. And you can't time a forest fire so that you're not there. A forest fire could be there happening while they're there. I think there is some safety issues. And I, as a person who would be living there, would be very concerned about that. And I don't know how your discussion is, but it's obvious that you just don't want to do this. Are you willing to help do something? Is there a way that the county, the Palmer Gulch Road District, and these private landowners can come together to bypass your area? Are you willing to help with that?
I thought we helped Ms. Troutman by spending $10,000. And again, to me, let's look at solutions where nobody gets damaged. And the solution is obvious here. The Forest Service is willing to allow their existing road coming to the north on the west side of the property. So
that's what I meant.
I think that's fine. That's a solution that doesn't hurt anybody. And they can spend the money to make that road just like they did through the Forest Service on the south of us. What's wrong with that option? Let's look at compromises where nobody gets injured.
And that was the option I was talking about, Doyle.
I'm fine with that one.
And you'd be willing to be come to the table and be a part of helping establish that?
Well, I'll do what I can, but it's already established. It's already a Forest Service road.
I think
Any
I
more
got my
questions?
answer then.
I think she was thinking about maybe you put $25,000-$30,000 in.
Yep, I was.
Well, I don't have the financials that the campground folks have, so their road district with the Forest Service could do that just like they did on the land south of us. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I too have looked at that before, and it bothers me a little bit that, and because I traveled over that road, and you're right, there is no public road through the campgrounds. In fact, it's very difficult to find your way from the 244, is that in the south, to get through the campground to find this road. So that bothers me a little. It also bothers me a little to have 8,000 to 10,000 people down there in a forest fire with one way out. That also concerns me a great deal. So I think we need to do something. But it's a very difficult question, balancing the rights of the public versus safety of the public. And I guess my major question is, and it sounds like we're not going to get it resolved until the guy upstairs resolves it, is what can we do with a public access easement? And I guess I don't know the answer to that either.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I guess if the Forest Service is willing to let them use that other road going out to the north side and rather than going down through private property. I know it maybe just a little bit further, but at the time that we started talking about all of this, I think the campground was willing to do the whole road, if I remember right. So if the Forest Service is willing to let them proceed across the Forest Service land, wouldn't that be better than being in a fight with private property owners? I don't know. I'm just asking that
I
question.
believe the issue was that it was more costly to do that.
Somewhat, yeah. But we got away from the idea that we're treading on private property rights and that kind of stuff. I don't know.
I have thought a bit about what you said, Mrs. Troutman, and I guess I'll make this proposal. We spent $10,000 already for the road. If we could change our public access easement to a private access easement, I'm sure we'll put in another $10,000, which will help defray going through that Forest Service area. I mean, why don't we, I encourage you to look at solutions where we compromise and get what we want. I mean, if you have these concerns about, with your concerns of public safety, and I recognize that, but let's reach a compromise where we don't get damaged. We'll put some more money into the pot and do the road on the west side of us.
Thank you, because that's what I was looking for.
Done deal. All right.
Well, I would have to say that's probably a really good beginning, because if that road gets built, there probably is no need for that public access easement through your property.
Yep.
I'm not sure $10,000 is the right amount, though. So.
Well, I was going to hit him for 25, but.
Well, but I
Geez, we got a federal judge and another attorney, and we ought to be able to work that out, hadn't we?
Public servants, that's what I'm saying. Public servant. As a commissioner, you understand public servant.
Well, no, they accused me of that a while back, and I said, I never liked that term because to me that meant slavery. And I'm not a slave to anybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I really want to thank Doyle for that, because that's where I was trying to head. I was trying to feel out where you could come to the table with something. And I think that's a start, and I think that we need to work at seeing what the county can do with some help and see what the difference was for the amount of money that the Palmer Gulch thought they had to spend to go through your property, and see where we can come together. To me, that will make sense. And I want to thank you for that.
Heine, what's your opinion?
I don't know if I want to state my opinion.
You've only got 2.5 years to go to retire.
All I know, there's 3 line fences across that other road, and each auto gate would cost you $20,000. So you got $60,000 right there just to address the open range fencing issue. before you start any type of construction on the roadway. And it will be a 3-4 year process to get approval from the forest, but that can be started.
Well, I think we need to talk to Palmer Gulch. We need to see where they're at with doing something like this, and we need to understand costs, and if there's an alternative, maybe somehow we can do fencing rather than those cattle guards that then we have to maintain.
Okay, what about speed limit? Do you want me to prepare a resolution and bring it back, or just not post any?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we need to do anything on the speed limit until we find out what we're doing, because 15, with the pictures, 15 looks pretty low on that southern half. Maybe in the northern half it might be all right, but if we do something different.
And then, of course, then you have your law enforcement issues, and how do you sit up there, and there's hardly anybody that will drive 15.
Solve the first problem first before we do the speed limit.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things we need to look at while we're working on this is that, of course, Mr. Thompson said that he would be transferred to a new job here next week. So there goes the contact that we've had for 30 years with the Forest Service. Slepnikoff is retiring in the next 2 or 3 months, I think it is. So there that goes. So if we're going to do something, we better get it done now, while everybody that's still there knows what was said and what's going on.
Agreed. I think you need to take that over and do that.
I do, huh? Thanks.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
We've had a lot of discussion about this, and I guess it's always been interesting to me how people's attitudes seem to evolve, but when I hear someone complaining about the condition of the roads, I always say to them, I'm driving on the best roads I ever drove in my life, and that is a fact. I came to Rapid City on gravel roads a long time before I came on a paved road, and yet we seem as human beings to think whatever we have isn't good enough, and I'm somewhat interested in and curious about this whole issue when they've got other ways to get there, or they can just get there a little slower, and nothing will be damaged, except their egos, maybe. Thank you, Heine.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Heine, and Doyle, both, and Patrick, what do you think about getting a meeting together in Hill City again and trying to work out this side of this thing? What's your...
Well, I think we've had the meeting and we've discussed it. Probably the first issue would be, can we get approval from the Forest Service to improve and open that other road?
Well, I remember Slepnikoff said that could be worked out, but like you say, it takes a while to work things out with the Forest Service.
So I think probably the first thing would be a letter of request from my office to the Forest Service saying, we're looking at improving that road for fire access, and what are the requirements going to be?
I think it's real important, given current conditions of the forests and their willingness to step up with a lot of different fire-wise type of things, that you do emphasize it's a concern for fire access. And I think that could help you move it a little faster.
Yeah, I will draft a letter or send a letter to Slippenkoff and ask him what are the rules and regulations and hoops we have to go through to see that, to improve that road.
And then if you get that back to us, then we can talk about where to go from there.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need to have a paper trail on that and make a motion to ask Heine to do that?
That's probably
Julie?
a good idea.
You don't think so?
Well,
What would you prefer?
probably would better to have a motion requesting the Highway Department to send a letter to the Forest Service requesting authority to improve or Yeah, somehow.
Somebody improve.
Somebody improve that other access.
That would be my motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks, Heidi.
Item 28. Oh, excuse me.
If I could indulge you for just one more moment. You know, when this whole process started a year or so ago, I started a road district for R3 property owners, and then for personal reasons, we decided not to go forward. But perhaps we could bring that back, and then we could have that road improved using their road district, the Palmer Gulch Campground, and we could do our road district, and we could both contribute. I mean, I read about the papers with you guys don't have money to 4-H and the animal shelter, and I'm thinking, you know, why don't we see if the two property groups up there could do it instead of taking 40, 50, 60,000 out of your pocket? If we can get some cooperation together, we could fire up our road district, and our 3 property owners could work with the campground road district and do this road. I mean, I like compromise. I like trying to work things together. So I'll throw that back out to you.
I appreciate that, because that's what I was looking for. It just seemed like we have good people on both sides, and we just seems like there could be something coming.
There's more than one solution. I mean, let's figure out a solution that everybody, that we get, the common goal is to get public safety taken care of, and if we can do that in a way that doesn't run roughshod over private property owners, you know, it seems to me a rational way to do it.
And I get that. I also understood how you felt. It was difficult to figure out.
I will talk to the other 2 property owners, but I would think they would be fine with that, and that way it worked together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we vote on that motion? I just lost my trail.
Next item.
Wasn't wide enough anyway.
Here, can I put some light on it?
Nick, you're next. Item 28, whole life insurance offer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nick Strout, HR Director for Pennington County. What brings us here today is the board passed a motion to allow Boston Mutual to offer an employee life option to our employees via payroll deduction. And we took that to the Healthcare Trust Board, and we were trying to work out logistics of that. And we ran into, I guess, a log jam there at the Healthcare Trust Board. We couldn't come to an agreement on how the logistics should work out. So in your packet, I basically asked 2 questions. The biggest point of contention that we had, at least at that group, and there is the sheriff sits on that, Heine from Highway sits on that, Janet. So they represent some of the larger departments that we have. Are these meetings going to be mandatory? In some conversations that took place between Don Filer, who is an HR manager for the sheriff, he mentioned a contract with the county and that this was to be mandatory, and we didn't have anything like that on record. And so there are some larger departments that didn't think this should be mandatory, that the option should be given to the employees. On his side, he said the only way that it works and the only way that it's effective is that every employee has the opportunity to hear it. So that's why we're coming to you today, is to make that decision. This originated from the Board of Commissioners, and we felt that it was right that that decision would come. KJ was here. KJ's not here. She had some history on the last time we offered insurance. It was through the Hartford when we switched Mutual of Omaha to the Hartford. She guessed 2008, before my time, and that was mandatory, but only because we also switched our $20,000 life insurance that the county pays for. So everybody had to sign off on that because it was a benefit that every employee got. So it was, everybody went to attend the mandatory part, but they just threw in a 15-minute presentation on the voluntary part. So according to her, this is some new ground we're breaking on totally voluntary insurance that we're offering, and should those meetings be mandatory. I did speak with Lee Hauser from Boston Mutual. He gave me some talking points he wanted me to pass out to you. I got these late last night, so I apologize they weren't in your packet. I'll just put that up there.
Thank you.
And as far as the contract with the county, both Holly, myself, well, I guess Holly, KJ, and myself, we have never seen an agreement or a contract. And through some research, he came up with the standard employee agreement out of his paperwork that was never sent to us. I have that. He sent that to me last night, and he said, well, can you just sign this really quick and get back to me? And I told him I wouldn't do that. But so it looked like apparently this was supposed to have been signed right at the beginning. And this does say, we will withhold premiums for this product. We agree that each employee will schedule a mandatory meeting. So there was an agreement that he thought we did sign, but we didn't sign it. And I don't know if we would have just signed it blindly anyway, because this seems to be a point of contention among some of the department heads of the larger departments. Logistically, the sheriff's office is probably the largest, well, obviously it's the largest employee group, but they're the ones that would have the more difficult time getting everybody in the same room for a presentation. At first it was an hour presentation, and then on this it says 15 to 20 minutes, and I think that does make a big deal, because when we were told an hour seemed like a lot. And then there's some departments who said that they just can't stop operations during work hours. This would have to be done either before work, after work, maybe on the weekends, and that would involve paying overtime because people are needed for their 40 hours. So a lot of different points. I know I'm throwing a lot of different stuff at you, but we as the Healthcare Trust Board, me as the HR director, we're just coming looking for some direction on this.
Mr. Chair, may I ask, AFLAC, we offer AFLAC, right? And
Correct.
that is voluntary.
Correct.
And do we have any mandatory requirements of a meeting?
Yes, and again, it kind of goes back to the same thing when we switched to Mutual of Omaha. What AFLAC does for us is offers the pre-taxing of our health insurance.
Oh, so
form needs to be signed to have your health insurance pre-tax, which financially works out for about 99.9% of us. And so that's kind of, again, they have to do this. This part's mandatory, but since they're there, we give them 15 minutes and we do that during the new hire orientation.
Okay.
Which everybody comes to, and we talk about benefits. So it is one of those things, they happen to be there because something's mandatory, and then we give them a little time to talk about their voluntary products. So,
But the point I'm trying to make is,
Yep.
if they were not the ones handling the mandatory requirement, then do we have any other insurances or services that are offered that people just can decide? Because I really just thought, this was my impression, and it's just, it's based on my experience in previous jobs. But when we offered something like this to employees, we never made it mandatory that they have to go to that meeting. But what we did is we would say, and AFLAC, we did do this. On this morning and this afternoon, maybe during several days time period, those folks that were representing the company were in a certain room given, and there was no charge for any of that or anything like that. They were just there, and any employee was certainly able to come during that time. And we did not charge the department overtime or anything. We allowed that department to make the arrangements. So if I said to my boss, I want to go see about that, we worked it out within my department how that was going to work, when I could get away. I wasn't charged for the time as being away from my desk, but I wasn't going to be able to be there for an hour either.
And you actually just described perfectly what the Healthcare Trust Board came up with. That was word for word what we decided.
Yeah.
6, 10
And I wasn't
meet-
at that meeting.
You weren't even there. No, 6, 10 meetings over 3 days, 6 a.m., 10 p.m., 5 p.m., noon.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And we brought that to Boston Mutual, and that's when they said, no. This has to be mandatory. Every employee has to hear this. And that's where we came to the logjam, because that was our thought. And
Well-
there's other members of the health, I don't want to be the lone representative of the Healthcare
Mr.
Trust
Chair.
Board up here.
I remember discussion, and I had part of it, and there was with no doubt in my mind, when we approved this, it was mandatory.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind. So, where does that leave us? Well, I don't want to pay a bunch of overtime, so didn't Boston Mutual agree that you don't have to, Janet doesn't have to close up her office and send everybody down here and for 15 minutes now, and
Now
if we
it's
hold them to that, okay.
Right.
We'll have to do that. They said they would work it out. They said, well, we'll do some Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. You can send 2 people at a time and take care of it. The sheriff's office is going to be a different story. That's a bigger problem. Highway, yeah, a lot of employees, I guess, whether we get out and start doing road work at 8 or 8:30 isn't going to make much difference
Right.
out there,
And
quite frankly. But the sheriff, that's a different ballgame. I'm not sure how we would do that.
And I think, like I said, I got this at 7 o'clock last night, so the difference between an hour and 15 this is the first time I saw 15 to 20 minutes. That is a lot more reasonable. We were under the impression it was an hour, and that seemed like a lot. Now, there is an employer agreement, I guess. He was referring to that. He thought it was signed. We, as the Healthcare Trust Board, and again, if other people disagree with me, please come up. We didn't hear the part that it was mandatory. So I'm happy to make it mandatory. You know, I'm a one-person department. My logistics problems aren't the same as the rest.
And I guess that's the way I remember it.
And we talked about, to Lee, we said, can we get these packets, these are the Boston Mutual packets, can we give them to all of our employees, and then the ones who are interested in what's in this packet, can they then come to the meeting? And he said that's not how it works. So again, that's what brings us here today.
Mr. Chair. Yes. I believe the gentleman from the insurance company is in the back of the room, and I guess I'd like to have him clarify, or is he here?
No, he wasn't able to.
Okay, I guess I'd like to have him clarify what it means that they'll reimburse the county for administrative costs.
They agree.
What does that mean?
They agree to reimburse the county for any time it takes to physically load the people who sign up. So this would be KJ's time, and I apologize, I don't know who does it in the sheriff's office, but KJ would be the big one on our side of the county who would, if it took 3, 4, 5 hours for her to take the 60, 70 people who want this, load it in, set it up, get all the kinks worked out.
As I remember visiting with the guy that put this together and was here during the convention, that they were going to pay those costs, overtime costs, that kind of stuff. So apparently now it's changing a little bit.
On the phone yesterday, it was just the administrative costs of loading it and making it payroll deductible. To me, that was my understanding, and I can always follow up with him.
We're in trouble now.
Oh, geez, I'll back out.
Janet Saylor. I think one of our concerns is also every time somebody comes in here with a new product, are we gonna make it mandatory that our employees go and listen to it? And then are we gonna pay them the overtime to do it? I, for one, and I'm not speaking for anybody else in the county, am not interested in this insurance. And I think if the packets were out there and people could see the cost, that a lot of them aren't going to be interested in the insurance. So I'm not sure why the commission wants to make it mandatory that every employee attend this meeting if they're not interested and they don't want to go. That's just my question.
I hear a lot of deafening silence.
Yeah. So in the information I gave the board. I guess that would be the motion that we're looking for is, I can pass out, again, I apologize, this was sent to me last night. This is the agreement that we didn't sign. But had we signed, we would be
Committed.
committed.
We get some money out of this, that's the reason we're doing it.
Yeah.
So this is the standard agreement. I assume we probably, somehow we lost this. We didn't ever get it, but this was the one that they would have wanted us to sign. And as you can read on there, in the top paragraph, second sentence, that each employee shall attend a group meeting. And he was willing to come for 3 days. They were gonna bring 2 or 3 people. We talked about shift change over at the sheriff, roll call, 6 a.m., 10 p.m. He was talking about going out to highway at 6:30. If Heine would make it mandatory, everybody be in the shop at 6:30. I gave him Heine's number. I gave him Don Filer over in the sheriff's office number and said, these are our 2 biggest groups. You need to work it out with them. And I think Commissioner Buskard, you have a point. If he's willing to put on quite a few here in the courthouse and the PSB, maybe we could send 3 or 4 people. I don't know.
I don't either. I'm not in charge of shifts, so I don't.
Right.
This week.
Yeah. But I think that the difference between an hour-long meeting and a 15, 20-minute meeting, to me, is a big difference, because an hour-long meeting did seem excessive.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think this is about the 4th or 5th or 6th times or something that we've taken up lots of the taxpayers' time and people's time that are here for other items. And we seem to be getting nowhere, and it doesn't seem to be real popular with the employees. So I guess, I know I'm not supposed to make a motion after making a statement, so I'll let somebody else say something and then I'll make a motion.
What was your motion gonna be, Ken?
My motion was going to be to put this in the garbage can and forget it, and let's get on with the taxpayers' work. That's my motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I got a motion on the floor.
Oh.
Well,
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but I want to hear what Kevin has to say.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second, and you have the floor, Sheriff Tone.
Yeah. Again, I just want to reiterate, we did bring this to the Healthcare Trust Board, and the Healthcare Trust Board agreed to not make it mandatory, and it has moved around from an hour to 15 minutes, and that complicates the decision today. But the Healthcare Trust Board was pretty adamant about not making it mandatory because of every vendor that comes along. Then do we have to do this how many times throughout the year? And as far as the worth of the program, Janet and I were just talking, she said she's not interested in it, but I don't know if that's the common opinion of the employees. I don't think they know yet. And I have spoken to a sheriff in another county out of state that has this program, and they speak very highly of it and the benefits that it can bring and things that they've done with their employees. So I think the employees should at least have a chance to hear it. I like the idea, and we used to do it at the city with our supplemental retirement plans like Nancy mentioned. The vendor would come in, whether it's SDRS, South Dakota Retirement, their supplemental plan, or the other one we used. They came in and set up designated times over a 2 or 3 day period to accommodate, the night shifts, the day shifts, and everybody else, and got the information to the employees, and they were able to attend if they wanted. I think that's a good option. Now, if we're locked in mandatory based on some contract, I guess that's a different issue.
Thank you.
I'll make a substitute motion to do exactly Nancy's program of allow them to come in and speak as many times as they'd like. We'll supply them a room and let all the employees know what's going on, and I guess maybe even go so far as to encourage them to come and listen, because I do think it's a worthwhile program that needs to be listened to, And I agree with the sheriff that anybody that, lots of people who have it
Mr.
do like it.
You're lobbying your motion.
Yes, I am.
Doesn't have a second yet.
Hey, I win so few motions, Linda. You got to give me a break.
Well, but
I was just
concerned
explaining.
that our secretary
That's my
doesn't
motion.
know
I
where
will
to.
second your motion
stop
and
it.
you can continue.
I wanted to clarify what I was talking about,
Yeah.
to give him an opportunity.
Okay, now, does our secretary have a clear understanding of what the motion is?
He's going to listen to this.
When?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you'd be surprised what a motion to put it in the garbage can does to get things off dead center.
And Mr. Chair, I just think that it's important that if Boston Mutual wants to present, perhaps not that big packet, because it's unlikely that a lot of people will read it, but it seems to me they would have a nice, to-the-point brochure that could be handed out to the employees, encouraging them to go. But I had a problem with the mandatory, and so I go along.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor of the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We now are addressing the substitute motion. And anyone wish the motion to be restated?
Heavens, no.
Not yet.
If it passes, I'll need some clarification, but we'll work on that later.
Hearing silence, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I vote no.
So does that leave us?
So we're good?
3-1.
Thank you.
I think I may change my vote.
All right. Item 29, items from the commission assistant.
Very quickly, Commissioners, I've started a daunting task of updating county policies. Two important ones that I found right away that I would ask for you to either reinforce, update, fix grammatical errors, so on and so forth. The first one I asked today is the rules that the county has established for the re-notice of vacancies and appointments to boards. Basically, there's no substance changes. I've just changed some grammatics to this policy. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer that.
You know, Mr. Chair, I don't have questions as to the policy, but maybe we could have the changes in red or something, so because we don't have the original, maybe as we go through this process, we could do that from now on.
I can do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So Holly, do we adopt the policy as changed? And
As
you wanna do
amended in
each
2012.
one separate?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I would make a motion to adopt the rewording of the policy for renotice of vacancy and appointment to boards.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Second policy in front of you today is the video recording policy of the commissioners' meetings. The major change in this is how long we will retain our DVDs in the office. Currently, the policy sits at 1 year. I would request that we amend this to withhold them for 6 years.
And may I ask why?
Recently, I was contacted by a department who had a request from DLA to review our tapes to find out how much time our board had spent dealing with a grant-funded item. Luckily, I was not following this policy to a T, and I had some of the discs available to answer those questions.
They don't take up much space anyway, do they?
What I understand is the way it was set up prior to my time is they weren't DVDs, they were VHS tapes that did take up a lot of space. However, one 2-inch binder is 3 years worth. It's not a space issue. And our current system doesn't allow me to record very many on the hard drive.
Mr. Chair, just to give a little background of that 1-year issue, we had some people come in who would ask for years and years worth, and we would have it would be you spending hours copying and copying and copying for this person or persons. And so to minimize that, because that was taking several hours a week, and they would either request that you get the whole meeting, or they'd request that you go back 3 years and you look for this on this, and then you make a copy of just that portion of the meeting. And so 1 year is a little short as far as I'm concerned, but there was an issue of how people, they didn't want to take what was in the minutes, and we were spending a tremendous amount of time. So I would suggest that I see the $10 service charge there for the DVD. Perhaps we need to also have, if it's going to take longer than a half hour to get this done, there's some kind of charge, because that was the background for that dropping back to 1 year, is that we had some people who came in and it required many hours of.
If they ask me for a portion, I don't give it to them. That system is a nightmare to do just a portion of a meeting. So if they ask me, they get all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's a $10 charge for the entire meeting.
Mr. Chairman, it's not that it's a big deal, except it's a change from 50 DVDs to 350 DVDs that we're going to be storing. And these meetings are not, and the DVDs are not official, they're not anything. And I'm not sure what we do and how much time we spend on something matters to anybody, or should it? So, I don't really care one way or the other, but I don't know. Time-wise, what's the difference?
It helps for me to have them as reference. If somebody asks me what we did, X number of...
Go to the minutes. That's what we have minutes for.
Sometimes minutes don't really clarify the intent.
Yeah. No. If you don't care, I don't care.
Well, I guess we could try the 6 years and see if it becomes an issue, but that was the reason.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And I don't, and item 3 in this new procedure, I have a real problem with that. Bring in an empty disc and we'll do the whole thing for you for $5. That doesn't even begin to pay the equipment usage.
No.
So my suggestion is if you come in and want a copy of a tape, we supply the disc and it's $10 in the story.
And you know, Ken, now that you say that, I mean, we're taking a foreign disc and putting it into our system.
No.
We aren't?
You're worried about security issues,
Yeah.
correct? No, that system is not hooked up to any of our county networks. It's a
Okay, good.
standalone, so it's not a security issue.
Okay, good.
Anything further?
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So then the security part of it, Holly, is we are talking about the new systems that'll be installed in the new commission room.
We will need to readdress this policy in 2 years when we move to the new building.
We don't want to forget that, because we could set ourselves up to have some kind of hacking issue or whatever, security issue.
Maybe we need to change the 6 years down to 3. Current year, and I have 2 years back. And then when we move to the new building, we will readdress.
Okay.
Okay. And again, I would like to see that item 3 changed to just a flat $10 charge and we supply the disc. It's not,
I'm fine with that.
That's your motion?
Yes.
We didn't lobby too much before you
No.
made it, so I'll second it.
I didn't, not this time,
I'll second it.
but I will
Okay,
now.
just to clarify, are you amending item 3 before we even know whether we're going to adopt the whole proposal, or what did you include in your motion?
Well, actually, we can include item 3 and item 6 and reduce item 6 to 3 years. Would you go along with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then approve,
You're amending 3 and 6.
okay,
Yep, amending 3 and 6 and adopting the program.
okay, I'm good with that.
So we have a motion to accept, to amend the $5 charge out of item 3 and to accept the 6-year amendment on item 6.
3-year amendment on item 6. 3 years in place of 6 years on item 6.
And the second is okay with?
That's what I thought he meant, yeah. We just didn't.
Secretary okay with what we're doing now? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion to take a 5-minute or 10-minute break.
Second.
Anyone want to amend that motion?
9.5?
It's going to be 15 anyways.
Next item on the agenda is the Planning and Zoning consent calendar, and Mandy will read the items into the record.
Good morning. I'm Mandy Schmear from Pennington County Planning Department. First, I would like to request, Commissioner, that items D, E, F, and G be removed from the consent calendar, please.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Said D, E, F, and G?
Yes, and then just place them on the regular agenda for
I'll
today.
make a motion if we need one.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second to remove items D, E, F, and G from the consent calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Agenda item A is the Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan. This is the approval of the DENR contract for Segment 2. Item B on the consent calendar is also a Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan, and this is the approval for the Forest Service agreement. Item C is the vacation of easement. The applicant is Cody and Jessica Mindell, and this was to vacate a septic system drain field easement. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the vacation easement with 2 conditions. Item H is the layout plat request. This is file number 12-18, Arlen Stratmeyer as the applicant, and the plat request was to create lots 8R and 9 of A and J subdivision. Planning Commission recommended approval of the layout plat request with 9 conditions. Item I is a preliminary plat request, Marv and Chris Matkins. This is file number 12-13, and this was to create lots 1, 2, and 3 of Matkins Addition Number 9. Planning Commission recommended to continue the preliminary plat request to the June 19th County Board meeting. Consent item J is a layout plat request. This is filed 12-19. Chris and Tiffany Hodo and Sean and Jody Burke are the applicants, and this was to create Lot A of Hodo subdivision and Lot A of Burke subdivision. Planning Commission recommended approval of the layout plat request with 13 conditions. That's the end of the consent calendar.
Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mandy. Now we move into the regular items. Do you want to take like D, E, and F, and G first, or?
I think it would be best to go into Board of Adjustment first.
Okay.
because D, E, and F, it's just a technicality. We just need to get the minor plat, or the variances approved before we approve the minor plat. So it's just a.
Okay, so we'll ask for a motion to go into a Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Motion is a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Did you get the motion maker and the second okay?
I didn't get who made the motion.
Ken.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, thank you. Item K is a variance request. This is file 12-04, Canadian Pacific Railroad as the applicant and Fisk Land Surveying as the agent. The variance request is to reduce the minimum lot size from 40 acres to 0.56 acres, 3.17 acres, 37.42 acres, 6.34 acres, and 37.55 acres in the General Ag District. This property is located approximately 3 to 5 miles south of Wasta along the Baseline Road. The purpose of this variance request is to go along with the proposed railroad plats that we have been seeing come through. This was just one of the steps of the minor plat that's also on the agenda. The minor plat and subdivision regulation variance request, like I said, will be heard at this meeting as well. We have not provided a recommendation for you at this time. The agent is here, and if you have further questions, I can certainly go into more detail.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve item H as presented.
How about item K?
Not item
K.
Yeah.
Yes, item K.
Is there a second?
I'll just second that.
Thank you. For keeping me straight,
You
too.
look right at me there, Lindell.
Okay, just to clarify, motion was to approve item K.
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, excuse me.
may I be heard?
Yes, you may. I'm sorry. Step forward, please. Identify yourself.
Yes, sir. My name is Mike Wilson. I'm a lawyer here in Rapid City. I represent the Jensen Ranch, and I don't know if this is the item that is particular because we got the notice last week. And the notice that I was here to speak about concerned sections 13 and 18. And I don't have the number for you, sir. But my remarks would probably be germane to all of these requests for variance. And I don't know if you wanted me to make those remarks now or a later time. But I'm only speaking on behalf of...
Maybe this is covered.
I
13
think
and
this
18.
would be the time.
Thank you. Excuse me. I do have some handouts, and I'd like to present them to you. I know that you know this ordinance by heart, but I don't, and it would be helpful to my remarks if I could provide that to you and we could walk through this together.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Oh.
I know this probably seems like a lot of paper, and it is, but I'm just going to harvest little pieces of each of these documents, and I'll just walk you through that now, if I may. We resist this request for variance on the following reasons. You know, we're a nation of laws, and this Board of Adjustment operates by consent of the legislature. SDCL 11-2-49 gives this Board of Adjustment certain powers, and only those powers. Section 509 is the variance that you've adopted pursuant to that legislative grant of authority. And I'd like to walk through that with you now. You may the purpose of the variance is to modify the application, and these are the reasons why a variance can be adopted. It must pertain to physical conditions of the land. It must impose practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship, which would deprive the owner, and the emphasis is on owner, of the reasonable use of his land. The owner in the case that I'm here for is Mr. Shell. He's the owner of the property that Fisk Engineering seeks this variance upon. And so to grant this variance, you must follow these rules. According to paragraph B, you shall consider, in accordance with the standards provided below, 4 things. One is you must first ascertain that all these criteria are met. Not some of them, but all of them. A variance is granted only where the conditions don't apply elsewhere in the district. The second, C2 really doesn't apply. C3 states that you can only grant a variance if the existing zoning regulation imposing a 40-acre minimum is a condition, a physical characteristic of the land that creates unwarranted hardship and constitutes an unreasonable deprivation of use, as distinguished from a mere grant of a privilege. I submit to you that if this variance is approved, Mr. Shell's use of this property will not be affected. He is the owner. And the fourth condition when you may grant a variance is when granting the variance must be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of these ordinances and shall not be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare. And the proponent of the variance must prove these things before you. I've seen no proof yet. They must prove that granting the permit is not contrary to the public interest and that the existing ordinances impose an unnecessary hardship and constitute a deprivation to the owner of the reasonable use of their land. That's the context in which we come here before you today because the petitioner has not made its case, nor can it. And here's why. The Powder River Basin Project is the reason that this platting was done, as I understand. And I'm not here to say or argue whether this is a public use consistent with public necessity, but here the Canadian Pacific Railroad has not shown it will build this railroad, has not shown that it probably will, has not shown that it might. And in fact, it's stated in Exhibits 1, 2, and 3 that this is speculative at best. I show you Exhibit number 1, which is some papers, some legal papers filed in the Custer County Courthouse in association with a file called Rittberger versus DM&E, I believe. And in this file, Exhibit 1 was filed. This is a dismissal of all the condemnation cases in Wyoming. They dismissed all their condemnation cases over there. And they said, in paragraph 2, due to significant changes in the economic climate, DM&E cannot say there is a reasonable probability it will proceed with its Powder River Basin project in the immediate term. And in paragraph 4, they stated, there are uncertainties regarding the time when DM&E will be able to meet the necessary thresholds for the project, and it is clear that the project will not proceed in the immediate term. This was a paper filed 3 years ago. In response to that, several of the landowners in Wyoming asked for the railroad and the speculators and the investors to pay for their bill. The district court in Wyoming, Exhibit 2, denied those landowners, the application for their costs to be paid because this lawsuit, this condemnation lawsuit, was dismissed over there. In this paper, this court order by the United States District Court for the District of Wyoming, the judge mentioned to you in paragraph 13, the judge said, the court is mindful that the amount of costs defendants seek, defendants were the landowners, The amount of costs they seek to recover in this action is only a fraction of the money they actually spent to defend their property rights from what, in the court's view, was an abuse of the condemnation process. I'm referring to page 6 on Exhibit 2. Paragraph 13, the judge continued to state, plaintiffs initiated this condemnation case, this is DM&E, for a project that was, in the court's words, always speculative at best. And by their conduct, the plaintiffs have squandered not only a great deal of the defendant's hard-earned money, he's saying the railroad squandered the landowner's money, but also a great deal of the court's time. And the court makes this comment for the benefit of its judicial colleagues in this and other districts so that they might look at any similar conduct by this railroad with a jaundiced eye. I submit to you that in this capacity as a Board of Adjustment, you are the judges that the district court was referring to. This is a July 20, 2011 order from the court. Finally, I show you Exhibit number 3. And I've underlined the passage that is relevant to this argument. This is a letter from Fred Green, the president and CEO of Canadian Pacific Railroad. He says to the chairwoman of the Committee for a Safer Pier in Fort Pier that first, CP has preserved the rights to build and operate into the Powder River Basin, but has, quote, no plans, closed quote, to do so. The president says, should the circumstances ever arise to justify such a build, CP will again visit with affected communities. I think these 3 exhibits demonstrate clearly that this project is no project at all. It is speculative at best, and prior proceedings in other states have been an abuse of the process. And then I call you then to the requirements for granting a variance. The requirements of granting a variance, the petitioner has to show that the owner's use of property is adversely affected by the existing ordinance. Mr. Shell and the other ranchers who signed on this deal can use their property as without regard to this petition for variance. They don't need a 13-acre parcel or a 3-acre parcel, and we don't need a checkerboard of little tiny parcels all over the county for these people to continue to use their property as agricultural property. That's the showing that's required. The owner has to show you that their use of their property is impeded by the current variance, by the current ordinance. And so what the petitioner is asking us all to do is they want us to draw a line, a squiggly line through our county, and then wait a year or 10 years or 20 years or some generations until the speculators decide it makes sense to take this land. In the meantime, there's a cloud over all the properties affected by this variance. In a very real sense, these folks want this property reserved for them until such time as they decide it makes sense and it's profitable for them to take it. In the meantime, we all wait. We wait. And in the letter that I showed you, Exhibit 3, we wait to see whether the circumstances, quote, ever justify this build. And for those reasons, I would think in a conservative place like this, where we respect property rights, that we would resist the temptation to bow down to out-of-state investors and speculators, and instead would stick up for the property owners here in South Dakota who would be adversely affected by these variances. In particular, because we're a nation of laws, and the petitioner has not, nor can it, show that a variance is legally justified. I appreciate your giving me time to make those remarks. I urge you to resist the temptation to grant these variances.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Patrick, can we give a variance to an applicant that does not own the property? and it has no, I'm asking our attorney, ma'am. I don't see any deed, any thing that's allowing them to make an application over this property.
What? Yeah, the property owner signed the applications is what.
Then what are we protesting for then? If the property owner signed it, why are we protesting it?
Is that a question for Mr. Wilson?
Either one, I don't care.
Because
I'm here to object for the reasons that I stated, is that the petitioner, the owners, the current owners, are not being deprived in any way of their reasonable use of their property currently. The current reg says 40-acre minimum for ag land. These guys are all using their land perfectly well with that limit. And for you to grant a variance, they have to show, as I showed you the ordinance, that their use of their property is being impeded by the current ordinance.
But again, they signed off on the ability to use this, apparently to the Canadian Pacific, for lesser amounts than 40 acres. Because as I understand, these pieces are already in smaller pieces.
No, I don't know that, but I.
Am I right?
Well, they're currently going through the platting process to create the smaller pieces. So
Okay, but the landowner has given them a signature, apparently allowing them to do it. Am I correct?
Yeah, let's hear from Janelle.
Janelle knows.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm here with Fisk Land Surveying. I'm here on behalf of Canadian Pacific and the landowners in this case. I believe that there's a little confusion because Mr. Wilson is here representing an adjoining landowner, Mr. Jensen. The property owners in this instance for the three actions that you see before you, which is the Soda Coast Ranch, H&K Ranch, and then the Shell property, they have all signed the applications. They are consenting landowners. They've signed the applications for the platting process as well as the variance process. So Mr. Wilson is representing a contentious landowner, Mr. Jensen in particular, that abuts the property that belongs to the Shells. And I would like to remind you, go back just a little bit, and we met with your legal representative, Jay Alderman. We met with your county planning officer, Dan. Mandy, I think, sat in, or Lusanne on that as well as your highway department. And we discussed the process that was going to be required to go through for the platting or the transfer to allow for the acquisition of this property to Canadian Pacific. We specifically discussed the variance process. And Jay did not indicate that it was not possible to do that, nor did any of the planning staff. And I think based on your actions in the past, I would say that we actually do meet the requirements that are established for the zoning. When it talks about specific circumstances or conditions, which can be narrowness or topography, the specific conditions here are that these landowners are desirous of selling or transferring portions of their property to Canadian Pacific. These portions, however, do not fall into 40-acre chunks. The ability to use your land, again, Mr. Wilson said that he's here on behalf of property rights and property owners, and I say, here, here. My property owners want the right to be able to transfer their property to Canadian Pacific. And there is no impact on Mr. Jensen or any of the other adjoining landowners by you granting this particular variance. It does not affect the Jensen property. It only affects the Shell property. And if Mr. Jensen, he's free to object to that, but there is absolutely no impact to his property. Without the variance, we can't utilize or transfer these lots. So that has to be a part or a component. If we strictly apply the circumstances of the zoning ordinance, they aren't able to transfer this property because we don't meet the 40-acre requirement for these smaller parcels. And we did remind that once these parcels are put together in joint with other landowners who are consenting and agreeing to this, you do have more than 40 acres in the comprehensive.
And when you're saying that's contrary to the public interest, I would say that there are 4 applicants here before you, and their interest is that they are ready to move forward with this. And I can appreciate and respect that Mr. Jensen has a difference of opinion, but it doesn't invalidate the process. It doesn't invalidate what we've gone through so far. And I believe that we meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance as you have approved zoning variances in the past for other items. I would be happy to try to answer any other questions that you might have. I really don't want to discuss the building of the railroad. Canadian Pacific has never given us a specific time frame, but we have done several plats in Fall River County and Custer County. The legality of whether they feel that it's going to be built or not built, I think is not an issue that's germane to the specific variance that we're talking about. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, sir.
The only person in this you're representing is Jensen, correct?
Jensen Ranch Incorporated,
Okay,
yes.
but Jensen's, whoever owns that ranch.
The corporation,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
That's right.
But
That's
you
my only client.
you aren't representing these other people that you talked about in your shells?
No.
Specifically?
No.
Okay, you just about had me for a second.
Well, I made that clear who I was here for at the beginning, Mr. Davis. I hope I wasn't unclear.
Well,
but it's very clear now that my only client is the Jensen Ranch Incorporated and
so
a
basically
neighbor.
what we're saying here is that we're worried about whether Joel Deering and Shells and HK Ranch want to sell their property, and has nothing to do with Jensen.
It has a lot to do with all property owners, including Mr. Jensen.
But we have a willing seller and a willing buyer in all 3 of these items that we're working on.
Yeah, I don't know that. That isn't,
We do.
I don't know that to be the case.
Apparently they've signed the paper.
I presume that's the case, but I don't know that, right?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Yeah.
It goes much, much deeper than sale of property. It goes to, we have 4 zoning ordinance criteria that have to be met to grant a variance. I'm having a little problem myself, seeing that we're meeting and that we can, I assume with Mr. Wilson here, if the vote goes contrary to him and his client, we may see this in court again, and a judge is going to say, show me how you found that stuff. And we better be able to do that, or else we lose. So, looking at the zoning regulations and looking at what the planning and zoning has to say about it, that specific circumstances or conditions such as exceptional narrowness, topography, or siting exist. They don't. Show me what specific circumstances or conditions exist that need a variance. That's one of my major problems, and on the other hand, I think it's a good thing that the railroad comes through, and we need the economic development, and we need to haul coal across the state of South Dakota. But we also have, we have laws we have to follow, and I'm having trouble with that.
But we do have some unwarranted hardships by not allowing the owners to sell their property and asking for this variance in order to sell it for the DM&E's or the Canadian Pacific's use. If we don't give a variance, then these folks can't sell their property. So it looks to me like that'd be an unwarranted hardship, unreasonable deprivation of use. They need the smaller pieces. They don't need the 40 acres that some of this is constituting. I don't know.
Yeah, but you can say that about any law, anything in the zoning ordinance. They don't want to do it, so heck, let's give them a variance, which we do quite often, frankly.
But they want to sell, and here we have a willing seller and a willing buyer, so that's deprivation against them or a hardship against the people that want to sell it.
But that's, okay, so you meet one of the criteria. How about the other 3? That's the problem with this, is we look at one thing and we say, oh, we need to let them sell it. But there's 4 of these things that we got to meet. Patrick, you got anything to say?
Sitting, part of it.
Obviously, I didn't come prepared to address that, and I don't speak on behalf of either the railroad or the property owners. It sounds like you may need to hear more from the railroad or property owners than, who aren't here right now. And I also haven't had the benefit of looking at those exhibits, although.
That he gave, do you want mine or?
Well, the exhibits mainly are the ordinance, which we have, and some court cases from Wyoming that they're never gonna build a railroad. Well, I'm not sure I care whether they do or not either.
Kind of apples and oranges on the Wyoming court case, because it sounds like that was about a condemnation action, which this isn't. But I understand your concerns, Commissioner Buskerud, and it sounds like you may need to hear more from the property owners and the railroad in order to establish the 4 criteria.
I mean, that's what I'm driving at, that I want from you is, I'm right about, if it goes to court, we do need to show these things and what we did, and why we did them.
I think that we would want, some clarity.
We have to build some sort of, case before we start voting. But.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer a comment. I believe that when it asks for specific circumstances or conditions or unique, I think the railroad in and of itself is the most unique or special circumstance. Have you ever, sitting on this body, approved plats or gone through the review process for a railroad? How often has that occurred in Pennington County? If you want a unique circumstance or condition, this is absolutely empirically unique circumstance and condition. When have we done this before? I ask you, can any of you tell me? So I hope, Mr. Buskerud, that would, I guess when I look at this, I see no relation to anything else that we've done that I guess would be even similar to this.
I think we've done this same thing in the past. If I remember right, we've voted on some of this before, haven't we? Yep. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have anybody in here complaining about it, so it just kind of went through. But
we haven't done a variance. This is the first time that you've seen a variance for the specific lot sizes. We've approved other applications, the plats, subdivision variances. Those parcels were larger and did not require the zoning variance.
And I guess I also have a problem with we're giving variances to pieces of property that don't exist. They exist, but as part of a larger piece, right? They haven't been platted off yet, so.
But you will hear that plat request at this meeting.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it first before I give a variance to a piece of property.
Except that you can't approve the plat because the lots are too small.
It's chicken and egg.
That's why I had to remove it from the.
And we've done it. We've always done it that way, where you have to approve the variance first.
Approve the variance first, and then we'll.
Okay.
If for any reason there would be a reluctance to approve today, my request would be to continue this to allow representatives from Canadian Pacific to be here as well.
And the landowners.
If the landowners want to come, they sure can. I visited personally with each person. I was the one who got their signatures. My notary is on there, so.
I agree with all that. I'm going to make a motion to continue this because I'm going to vote against it, and it's not going to pass with my vote against it. And since there's only 4 people here, I just think they deserve a right to have all 5 commissioners here. So I'll make a motion to continue.
Well, let's see, we already have a motion, don't we?
Substitute that.
I would withdraw my motion.
Let's kind of study this just a moment. Is this direction that we're headed with the suggested motions going to apply to K, L, and M, and also D, E, and F, and G? And if so, I think for efficiency, we just package it all up.
Yes, you could package K, L, and M, and D, E, and F together.
Well, we couldn't vote on D, E, and F until we go out of
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment, yeah.
But I just wanted to get our thinking aimed in the right direction so we aren't making a half a dozen motions on
I think that makes sense.
things. So, okay, let's do the variance motion first and be specific.
I make a motion to continue it until, I don't know, can we do it at the next meeting? Janelle, would that work for you? If not, we can continue it again. I make a motion to continue K, L, and M until the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second to continue K, L, and M till the next meeting of the commission. Any discussion? Yes.
Did you withdraw the first motion then?
And I just want to give everybody a chance to take another look at this and give the landowners an opportunity to answer my questions on why we should do this. Okay. And I've heard from Mr. Wilson, and he can supply whatever more information he wants. That would be my reasoning.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on this motion? If so, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Make a motion to come out of the Board of Adjustments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to come out of Board of Adjustments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That makes, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to continue D, E, F, and G until such
No,
time
not
as the
G.
variance. Huh?
Not G.
Okay, D, E, and F.
D, E, and F, okay.
Can't we put Ryan's in there too? What the heck?
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue D, E, and F.
Until such time as the variance is approved.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, you want to do G?
Yes, please.
All right.
Item G is a preliminary plat request and a subdivision regulations variance request. The applicant is Dean Kelly Construction, Ryan Kelly as the agent, and the preliminary plat request is to create lots 1 through 3, Block 4 of Sheridan Lake Highlands, and to waive some subdivision regulation variance request. The reason I requested that this item be removed from the consent calendar was to amend condition number 3. Planning Commission did recommend approval of the subdivision regulation variance request and approval of the preliminary plat request. However, in their motion at the Planning Commission meeting, they amended condition number 3 to March 1st, 2014, and so the minutes were incorrect. Therefore, the memorandum that was prepared for you was incorrect, so I just wanted to clarify that that date was March 1st of 2014. And that goes along with the bond that's currently in place for the road improvements out there in Sheridan Lake Highlands. Other than that, like I said, Planning Commission did recommend approval of the preliminary plat and the subdivision regulation variance with 6 conditions.
Any questions or comments?
So we do need to approve this with that change in date.
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat PL 12-17 and subdivision regulations variance SV 1207 with the, is it 6 conditions?
Yes.
And the change of date and condition number 3 of March 1st, 2014.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Me too.
Okay, item N.
Good morning. Brittany Molitor, Water Protection Coordinator. I'm here to present the recommendations from the Spring Creek Advisory Group that were made on May 29th, 2012. They made 3 recommendations at that meeting. The first was that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners adopts the 2012 Spring Creek Monitoring Plan. The second was that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners approves the following application ranking summaries and 2012 BMP cost list. Those cost lists and ranking summaries include the riparian stream bank application, the stormwater application, the manure grazing application, the forest stormwater application, the on-site wastewater treatment system application, and the 2012 BMP cost list and cost share rates. And the third recommendation that the Spring Creek Advisory Group made was that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners sends a letter to Mr. Bob Thompson at the Mystic Ranger Station for the Black Hills National Forest in support of the dredging and dam repair at Mitchell Lake. So at this time, I can just present these. No action is required from the board. So if there are any questions?
And then we vote next time, right?
Correct.
I'd like to put in there that this advisory board meets once every 6 months. We don't have to do this every meeting.
We're trying to.
My suggestion would be also that you put this stuff on to the very last item on the agenda. So we get the people's
We tried to.
Get the people's items taken care of ahead of this.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
After all that, is there a motion required? Good thing.
Boy, this is going to be loud.
Item O.
Item O, good morning, Lisanne Zeller from the Pennington County Planning Department. Item O is a rezone 1204 and comprehensive plan amendment 1202. This request is to rezone 0.15 acres from limited agricultural district and 2.45 acres from general agricultural to general commercial. The applicant is Todd Munyon of Main Street Motors. This property is located at 5900 East Highway 44, just east of the Rapid Valley Volunteer Fire Station. The applicant did apply to rezone this entire parcel to general commercial. It currently exists of 2 lots. His intent is to operate a small used car sales business in the northwest portion of the property. Several of you commissioners have sat in on planning commission for this request and are probably familiar. I do just want to explain a couple of things. There are, like I said, it's 1 tax parcel. There's technically 2 lots. Mandy, if you'll go back. There's that slide. Let me show you here. So the request is to rezone Lot A, which is this lot here, and Lot B, which is this lot here. It's currently 2 lots. It is requesting to rezone 1 parcel to general commercial. Staff does have some concerns with the existing layout of the 2 lots that were explained in the staff report. The applicant can address those by platting the 2 lots into 1 lot. He would need to work with the city of Rapid City to do that. Mr. Munyon has talked to them. They have a very quick process to combine lots. It's called a consolidation plat and takes 13 days. He's very willing to do that to address some of the concerns about setbacks and lot size if the rezone request is approved. If not, he would rather leave the lots as is. They're currently considered developmental lots, so he would like to leave them as is if the rezone is not approved. The property is surrounded entirely by agricultural zoning districts. There are some other residential zoning districts in the area, suburban residential and low-density residential. There's also the nearest commercial zoning district is about 1 mile to the west and 3 miles to the east. There's a convenience store in the Rapid Valley area, and then out by the airport we have some commercial zoning for an auto auction business and a well drilling business. So the proposed request is really considered spot zoning as far as we're concerned, since there's no other nearby commercial zoning in the area. Up on the PowerPoint, we do have the future land use map, which does designate the property as being zoned suburban residential in the future. So this is, again, not in congruence with that. So he's also submitted a comprehensive plan amendment request. The Planning Commission did recommend denial of both the rezone and comprehensive plan amendment requests, as did staff, based on its unconformity with the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan. The Rapid City Community Planning and Development Services Department did state that their comprehensive plan does designate the majority of the property as commercial. However, the property is located in the county, so staff did make their recommendation based on the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan. I know the Planning Commission discussed, getting those 2 plans in alignment. They're currently not, and that may be a future project for our office to work with the city on. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicant's also here to represent himself if you have questions for him.
When was the last time you were out to the property? You're not recently?
Not recently, no.
I'm just wondering if the bus is still there in the right-of-way.
Sure, and I will have the applicant comment on that. I know there was some concerns, Mandy, if you want to move forward or backwards one slide, there we go. The applicant does allow a gentleman to park a bus there. I know there were some concerns about it being in the right-of-way. Staff, specifically Dan, did speak with a gentleman from the DOT who really didn't have any concerns with it. We don't regulate parking in the right-of-way. I know the applicant, I believe he's agreed, I'll let him verify that if the rezone's approved, he will remove that bus. So it's no longer there.
Do it even if it's not approved.
Lizanne, one thing that I'm aware of some people who wanted to purchase this property, and there were some septic systems issues. They had some research done, and that's why they did not purchase it.
Okay.
And so I do have some concern about that because in your comments, it really wasn't addressed. It was like, well, if there's a problem, they'll fix it.
Sure.
But I know that they did not purchase that property because of it.
Right. I guess I was not aware of that. This does fall within Rapid City's 1 mile septic jurisdiction. So we did receive comments from Louis Arguello with the Rapid City Public Works Department. Like you stated, Commissioner Troutman, that it's okay as is. If they expand something, they'll need to upgrade, but he really did not comment on the existing system. I was not aware of that, and maybe the applicant can comment on that. Yeah. I'm not sure in Rapid City if they have to obtain similar to what our operating permit is when you sell or transfer a property. In Pennington County, we require that you have it pumped and inspected prior to the sale or transfer. I'm not sure if they do that in Rapid City or not, but that would have probably discovered issues if there were some, and maybe that is what happened. Yep.
So what we would be doing is, he's going to put the cars along behind that fenced area right there.
Right, and maybe we can go back to an aerial, please, Mandy.
Because that's not a very large area.
One more.
Perhaps.
And one more. Sorry, I included maybe one more. A lot of maps, so I could answer all these questions. He would like to use this portion of the property here to park the vehicles.
What's that?
He would like to use this portion of the property here to park the vehicles. There's currently a garage here that he would use part of it as an office. There's a house and an old barn. He doesn't plan to develop this area at this time. He would be utilizing this area here.
So if we approved this and it was put into one lot, then technically he could put cars on the other side as well.
Absolutely. Yep. He is applying to rezone the entire parcel, so we do have to consider that the entire parcel could be used commercially and what other uses could occur on that lot. He specifically wants to live there and operate a small used car sales business. But we, yes, definitely should consider the rezoning of the entire property and the other uses that could occur on it.
So the hindrance we have is Pennington County decided it should be suburban residential.
Oh, there's more to it.
Yeah. And well, yeah, that's a start.
Yeah.
But the city has put it commercial in their plan. So we have a car lot to the west. We have one to the east, and we have another one at Caputa.
Yeah, I'm not sure which is the closest to the west. There is the auto auction sales business out by the airport. There is one now in Caputa at the general store. I'm not sure, and the applicant might be able to speak on it. The one to the nearest one to the west may have shut down, if I'm not mistaken.
Dunbar, whatever it is, it's to the west.
What's that? I'm sorry.
What's the name of that one? Dunbar.
Dunbar, yeah. I'll let the applicant speak on that. I believe at a previous meeting he had said that one had closed down.
I'll throw my 2 cents in. I said in the planning commission, and I'll shut up. No, this is in the middle, 1 mile to commercial one way, 3 miles the other way. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and now we're going to have a used car dealer. We've got enough junk cars in the way into Rapid City along the interstate. I don't think we need to start that coming from the airport into Rapid City. So, that's my 2 cents.
And the planning commission rejected it
for that reason, and it's too small.
further comments on this issue? Anyone wishing to speak?
Yep, Mr. Munyon, the applicant, would like to speak.
Good morning. I'm Todd Munyon with Main Street Motors. There's been lots of discussion on this property, and I would like to first clarify, we're not talking about selling junk cars. That's the second time we've heard this comment in planning and zoning. We heard that also. So I disagree with that. We've also heard analogies of the neighborhood of Chapel Valley. This is far from that. And we feel like we've been profiled and discriminated because we want to have a small used car business there, but then it always comes up that if it's rezoned commercial, then it can be anything that was in commercial. So I'm not sure why there's so much scrutiny over what our immediate use would be, which is certainly not selling junk cars. They're used cars. That property is on a major corridor. That's why the city has it zoned in their plan for commercial use. And I was watching the board on TV recently, and they were talking about cutting positions or adding positions. And even though this is not a railroad size development, it would increase the tax base and could add or save some support staff position. The tax base would go up. So I'm not sure why there's so much opposition against developing it. And you've also used the comment in the middle of nowhere. That is absolutely not in the middle of nowhere. That's on the way to the airport. The nearest used car dealer, Dunbar Cars, did close down. But I'm not sure why we always discuss how many car dealers there are if when you rezone it commercial, then the use really goes out the window and it can be anything commercial, because that's been some concerns. So to me, you would either have to say, well, we put restrictions on it, which, as I understand, you can't. The bus has been another big issue. We let the guy park the bus there as a favor to be neighborly. But if we want to just focus on the bus instead of some economic development for the county, that is not what would be best for the county. And as it turns out, you can park in the right-of-way according to the DOT, but we would have the bus moved if we were running a car lot there. But the bus should not be the big focus. And ma'am, your friends that looked at that property, I would imagine it was a little more than just the septic system. That house was in a total state of dilapidation.
Well, they intended to build, but they couldn't use the current septic system because there were issues. So they would have destroyed the house and built.
Sure. We're actually restoring that house. It was moved from downtown Rapid City. But clearly there's opposition to this whole used car lot deal. We don't feel that is in the middle of nowhere. And as far as residential, if you ever go stand out there or visit the property, where you have propane tanks across the street, the fire hall close by, the traffic noise is very high. It's not very conducive to residential. Certainly not like Chapel Valley or Hills like it was compared to. So developing that corridor, the reason the city has that as a commercial corridor to the airport is because that's how most major highways are when they're going out to the airport.
So can you address my question about that very small area where you indicate that?
Yes, ma'am.
That you're going to put your cars? I mean, that's really limiting your ability to do business if you only have, I think there's 5 cars shown on your drawing.
Yeah, it would probably be 6 to 10. That would be small, but even at that, if it's all zoned commercial, I think part of the fear has been that we fill the whole field up with used cars.
Which you could do.
You could do. So whether we say we're doing 6 cars in that little corner right now is really irrelevant. That I can just tell you, and you'd have to take me at my word, we would still run a couple cows out in that field. So no, we don't. As far as we had 2 neighbors that had concerns, we do not want to turn that whole area into a car lot. But theoretically, if it was rezoned,
you could.
You could put a gas station there. It's also said that the property is too small, yet when we posed the question, what's big enough, we couldn't get an answer. So can you guys tell me what's big enough today? If it's too small, And why is that too small if we have gas stations and many other commercial properties up and down that highway that are considerably smaller than that?
Well, the gentleman that said that isn't here, so probably not a fair question.
I was just curious about the neighborhood reaction, and you did sort of allude to that. I don't know if we know.
We had two neighbors that showed up at two of the meetings that kept saying it's a wet area, yet it's not in a floodplain, it's not a wetland. They knew the gentleman that owned it before we bought it, that did let the place get totally ran down. I mean, it's looking considerably better now. But again, just from a economic standpoint, I don't know why the county wouldn't want to increase the tax base. This is not nestled in some tranquil neighborhood, even back in that area. It's currently zoned agriculture, which is supposed to be 40 acres by modern standards. It's clearly too small for that. It's not conducive to residential. Nobody's going to want to live on the highway. Nobody's going to build houses across the street next to the propane tanks that aren't zoned commercial for whatever reason. Maybe they were grandfathered in. But when they redid that road, I'm sure it was to increase traffic flow to get to the airport. So it's not unusual to have commercial properties there as the city's plan. So I don't know if there's some not wanting to ally with the city's plan just for political reasons, but to me that doesn't seem like a crazy request to have that be a commercial property to increase the tax base. We would probably do some concrete work there eventually, but we can't do anything like that until it would be zoned commercial. Otherwise, it's gonna stay pretty much like it is with minor improvements, and you're gonna get $1,000 a year in tax base. That could go up to $3,000 to $5,000 with improvements. We would probably put some more modern, like a building up there in the years to come. So I would disagree, and many people I've talked to would disagree on the property being too small. How is it too small when the other properties are smaller? Many of them. And Dunbar Cars did close down, as a side note. The closest car lot to the west is L&P Motors, but that should really be relevant also. You know, unless we're discriminating against the type of business, but if it can be any business when it's commercial, why does it matter so much if right at the moment we would say we're selling used cars?
I think just to help with that comment is that when we change that zone just, I mean, that piece of property remains zoned forever. So when you sell it, you could sell it to somebody else. So we need to look at what that purpose might be when you sell it, somebody else might do with it. This isn't just for you, for this particular, it's for the future that we're looking at.
Don't you have ordinances and everything to keep, because there were comments made, well, that's not big enough for the setbacks, but whatever your commercial designates, you would be protected by that.
I don't think you heard what I said.
Pardon me?
I don't think you heard what I said. So I won't go further with that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
From the planning staff, did anybody ask him or talk to him about the conditional use permit on this piece of property?
I can comment on that.
Yeah, I did ask about that, because that would be fine with me. Apparently, that's not an option.
Yeah, it's not really an option. The property.
Pull your mic up.
Sorry, that's not really an option. The property is zoned agricultural, and we don't have a used car sales business listed as a conditional use in an agricultural zoning district. It doesn't really qualify as a home occupation.
Wait a minute. So I think somebody told me that it was zoned suburban residential.
The future land use designates the zoning of the property to be suburban residential. It is currently has split zoning of limited agricultural and general agricultural. So the comprehensive plan designates it as suburban residential. Currently, it's zoned agricultural. We only allow used car sales or just car sales in general in our commercial zoning districts. They're not allowed as a conditional use in any of our other zoning districts, nor as a home occupation. I know that would solve his, wanting to do this on the property. Unfortunately, our zoning ordinance does not allow it. in order to get a dealer's license from the State Department of Revenue, is it? Or, yes, they do require a memo from our office verifying that the zoning is appropriate on the property, and that's where it needs to be zoned commercial. So unfortunately, I don't see in our ordinance where we could allow the car sales as a conditional use in agricultural or even residential. It's just not compatible to those zoning districts.
Land unit development?
We don't typically do one lot PUDs, planned unit developments.
Typically you do it.
Right, right. Well, if you read the intent of a planned unit development in our zoning ordinance, it is for the design of larger developments and things. It's not typically done for one lot. I'm not sure that it would satisfy the state. I guess we could look into it. We'd have to get some opinion from our possibly state's attorney and see if that would satisfy the state requirements. You know, PUDs do allow for neighborhood commercial uses. I guess it would have to be determined if a car sales is considered a neighborhood commercial use, but it does not allow for outright commercial uses. It specifically states neighborhood commercial. But if the applicant's denied today, I'd be happy to work with him and see if there would be another option. I don't know that there is presently, but we could sure do some research and go that way.
So if we would postpone this till the next commission meeting, would that give you time to work on something to see if we could come up with something else? I'm really uncomfortable changing that to commercial myself in that zoning area.
Sure.
I thought it was already zoned with suburban residential, but apparently it's not. So I understand right where he's coming from, because that's going to be a business corridor on its way to the airport. Sooner or later, that whole highway is going to be, it's not going to have anything to do with suburban residential. And it's not going to have anything to do with agriculture sooner or later.
Right.
But you don't start in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Yeah, and I did mention to Lisanne after the last meeting, I would be perfectly comfortable with some sort of conditional use permit, or the state's very easy to satisfy with those. If the county's okay with it, they're okay with it. You just need a letter saying, yes, he can do that. So, our intent is not to rezone a commercial, sell it and make a ton of money. No, I'm gonna live there for many years. So if there is a way to do a conditional use permit, that would be fine.
I'm not sure that there is. Like I said, I'd be happy to research it. I believe all the other car sales business in Pennington County operate under commercial zoning. So this would be a deviation from that. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but currently all the other car sales businesses that we've talked about today were zoned commercial.
Yeah.
If you pursue a different direction on this, as you're suggesting, will this then go back in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Likely, depending what application was submitted. All the applications do go through the Planning Commission. I suppose.
Planning did indicate they would be favorable of a conditional use permit, but then it got into, well, the language isn't there to do the used cars in the small portion and that kind of thing. Unless you can come up with something, some sort of language or.
Right. I know Mandy's reviewing the zoning ordinance right now, and as it's currently zoned general ag and limited agricultural, there's no conditional use is listed that pertain to car sales. It doesn't really fit in that current zoning. I don't even think if we rezoned to residential that it would fit either. Car sales wouldn't really be a compatible residential use. But we can certainly pursue the planned unit development option and consider that and do some more research. Like I said, we've just never had a car sales business not in commercial before, so.
What's the wish of the commission?
make a motion to postpone this item until the next commission meeting. Allow them, planning staff and the applicant to try to work out some other problems.
Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes.
You know, I'm just recalling how when we did the auto auction, how it was a big deal to have it kind of fenced and where we stored cars and do all those kinds of things. And that actually was the city was into that as well. And so I'm kind of curious how it's just different.
You know, in that case, they were also attempting to plat the property with the city. It does fall within their platting jurisdiction out there by the airport, and they were trying to split that lot, so I know they did have some more contribution to the project. It was never final platted. That has remained as one parcel with split zoning. The applicant in that case did choose to install some fencing and things. I actually believe, and I'm sorry, I worked on that project several years ago, auto auction business might be a conditional use in that zoning. In general commercial, he may have had to get a conditional use permit. Then we did have some authority to say you have to install fencing and landscaping and things. If I remember correctly, you did have to go through the conditional use permit.
Okay, I'm going to ask that the discussion be relative to the motion to postpone.
Oh, sorry.
So, if there's any other discussion as to the impact of the motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to complicate things further.
Sure you don't.
If part of the reason that this might be postponed would be to explore, for example, a planned unit development, I guess my thought would be, I don't know that car sales would really qualify as neighborhood commercial. I would think that would be the sort of business that a person might, people in a neighborhood might walk to the sort of things you see in like the Circle S Plaza. Convenience stores or boutiques or that sort of thing. I don't think a lot of people walk down to buy a car on a Saturday afternoon, but.
Yeah, they do at my car lot. We're right down here across the street, and people from the city mission, I've sold about 10 cars to them. So it's not completely out of the question.
Okay. We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, you're going to discuss the motion some more?
No, sorry.
Okay. Call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hung jury.
Aye. Tie vote. So the motion failed.
No, I voted against the motion.
Excuse me?
I voted against the motion, so that's 3 against and 1.
I voted.
Oh,
My
voted.
vote would be for.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay.
So the motion failed either way.
Mhm.
A tie vote rolls to the next meeting.
Okay. So we got there whether we wanted to or not. All right, item P, road naming.
Agenda item P is a request by Pennington County to name a 50-foot wide access and utility easement to Little Tiger Lane. I have included a petition for that. The reason that this was not on the consent agenda was due to some concerns from the county highway department about who would be installing the road sign. Since this is on a private access easement, I do the majority of addressing for Pennington County, and sometimes we run into cases where we need to name roads. This was one of those instances. We have several mineral survey loads in the area that are serviced by this easement. There's actually 10 lots provided access from this easement. It's getting to be an issue for addressing. The last named road is Lois Lane, and I have houses to the north and to the west and the south that are all addressed off of Lois Lane. So it's become, I know.
You need to do a better job of that. We need more Lois Lane types of streets in this county. That is the coolest name I've ever heard.
You could do Superman.
I know.
Or whatever.
Yeah. It's some people love that name up there and some don't, so to be honest. So it has become necessary to name this road. So Pennington County has petitioned to name this easement Little Tiger Lane, which is what some of the mineral surveys up there are named Little Tiger. So that's where that road name came from. I have included a memo requesting that in addition to approving the resolution, or petition today rather, that we also provide a motion granting the county highway department the authority to create and install the road sign for this easement. It is a private easement. They typically install roads for public roads, but not for private ones.
Install signs for public roads, you mean, is that what you're?
Right, I'm sorry if I didn't say
But this is never going to be a public road, even though we name it.
Absolutely, yep.
Well, I would object to having the highway department do anything with the signs. I don't think we can spend public money on private property.
Right, and that was Tiny's concern from County Highway. I thought he might hang around and be here today. That's why I am requesting that you allow that to happen. I don't have another means for that sign to get posted, and I need a sign for emergency services response.
What's the post office going to do about it? They're going to object if there's, how do they deliver the mail now?
You know, I don't know that these folks have mail service. Most of them have P.O. boxes. If there are mailboxes, they're either out on Deerfield Road or down on Marshall Gulch. There's not.
So that's not a problem. It's just emergency.
It's just emergency services, yep.
And emergency services will have this mapped.
Right, but if I don't have a road sign out there, I mean, it will be on the map that the dispatcher's looking
Can we
at.
put a road sign, is there any public roads there that we can put a road sign saying? Indicating, go that way to Tiger Road or whatever?
I would strongly encourage you not to do that. Mandy, if you'll go back to, there's a good map. If I could show you here. This is Marshall Gulch Road. This is a dedicated right-of-way. And once you get to this cul-de-sac, you start up Lois Lane, which is also a private easement. And then this is where Little Tiger.
Oh, shit. No, that wouldn't work.
So I can't really put a road sign here that says Little Tiger Lane up there somewhere.
Well, I believe that county statutes, county regulations say that you have to have your property marked so emergency services can find you. And I think if you look someplace in there, I think there's a deal that says that if you're within a certain distance, you might have to have 2 signs.
That ordinance 20 does pertain to house numbers. I don't think it specifically states names of roads, and that would get tricky. Even if, you know, the folks living down in the southwest corner there, if someone doesn't know to turn onto Little Tiger Lane, even if their address sign says, you know, 23607 Little Tiger Lane, it's
how many residents are down in there?
There's 10 properties. There are 4 addresses that would need to be
10
changed.
people don't want to get together and buy a sign from the county and put it up that says Little Tiger Lane, disobey.
Typically in the past, when Pennington County has petitioned to name the road, we have taken care of the cost of the road sign and installation because I am actually the one requesting that it be done. So that would be an unforeseeable cost to them. I don't have a way to assess that or force them to get it up. I could ask them nicely.
Who came up with the name?
I did, I guess. Sorry, I'm trying to remember.
Why are you worried about naming their road when they're not worried about it?
I need it to be named to facilitate addressing. I have a mess of addresses currently in the area. Like I said, I will point out on the map. I have Lois Lane addresses. This is Lois Lane here.
Lois Lane ran around with Superman, didn't she?
I have addresses here off of Lois Lane, there, here, down here, and down here. And so it's just become necessary that that road be named for addressing. I'm out of addresses as these lots to continue to develop. I have no more addresses to assign off of Lois Lane. And currently the road goes up and it goes that way, so it splits.
I want to make a motion that we name that road in question Little Tiger Lane, and that we have Patrick research whether the county can spend money on private property for safety purposes.
I can already answer that question. I believe that we can. I believe that we can spend money, perhaps not out of the county highway and bridge fund, but I believe that we can spend general county money to address a road, even if it's a private road, if we're addressing it for the purposes of emergency services communication, which is what we're doing. That's the real reason we care about having addresses. For enhanced 911 service, you need to have every parcel addressed, and we have had issues in the past. I know the 911 center has told me where they've tried to send an ambulance to a location, and it was a road that was actually being built at the time. It was on the map, but there wasn't a road sign up yet, and the the ambulance and the fire department had difficulty finding where the road was because they were looking for a road sign that didn't exist.
Well, my motion then would be to change, to have the name of the road Little Tiger Lane, and to have the planning department get a hold of the people who live there to try to get some contributions to put the signs up. And have the county take care of the rest of the cost over and above the contributions.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
So if I get 0 contributions from the landowners.
But I think you need to let them know it's not going to be thousands of dollars. It's a small amount.
I think we'll be able to tell you how much it's going to cost.
Right, and I have a general idea of how much that is,
Yeah.
and I can certainly ask. If I don't get any contributions.
You don't get any, then we pick up the rest of it.
Okay. That sounds very good.
I don't like to do that, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
We're ready for committee reports.
I'm not going to say a thing. I've gone far enough today.
Me too. I'm done.
I have
Okay.
something to say.
Oh, your turn. We're giving you the opportunity.
Last Thursday, a week ago, I went to a meeting with the Forest Service, and they had Dan Horan, who is the new regional forester from Denver, and the Brian Farabee, who is the assistant regional forester. Farabee, no relation. Anyway, they came up and visited with a bunch of the group that's been working on the mountain pine beetle agreement that we took a part of, and I just want to say that one of the things that I was so proud of our area, because we are so unique in how we've approached our problem, in that we've gone into it in great depth. We have tried to find ways that we can all come together and collaborate, and we're all getting on the page. And they said that is so unusual. And the plan that we've developed is something that the Forest Service is going to use as a template for other areas who are experiencing similar forest issues. And I was really pleased to hear that. I also was very pleased in that they are impressed with our area. I feel that because we have all stepped to the plate and done something, we have been so supportive of trying to get something done, that they're willing to work more with us. And they mentioned, but of course it's come out in the paper since, that there was the $1 million, and they're looking for more money. One of the things they talked about on behalf of Pennington County was our concern that we are the epicenter of the mess. I mean, we have the most existing damage, and we need to be very careful of how we handle evacuations and the emergencies, and I explained what we had been doing. And they're willing to look for funding to help us. And they were very open to our situation, and I was pleased with that, because you just don't hear that stuff all the time. And at least I heard it, and I wanted to pass that on. I'm really proud of Pennington County, and they thought it was very interesting how we were doing our own county mountain pine beetle committee, and some of the things that we're doing there, how we're making our plan. They were just impressed with the whole area, but with us too. And they felt that we were very lucky to have a governor who had been willing to spend time with them, willing to step out there and give us some help. He's very supportive of trying to get this under control. So I really just wanted you guys to know we have done a really good job. We should be very proud. We can't stop working, but we should be proud of what we've done. And that leads me to some funding. one of the things that I talked about with them is this new Title III money. If we don't use it, and we talked about it earlier today, if we don't use that by the end of September, then it goes back to the federal government. And the new ranger is he spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., and I said to him, because I've talked to our congressional offices, where does that money go? And he said, I helped write those parameters. He was in D.C. at that time. And he said, I know where that money goes. It goes back to the Treasury. And I said, well, then, if there is a county somewhere in the United States who cannot use that money, can that money that's turned back to has been turned back to the Treasury be diverted to help areas like with problems like we are experiencing? And he said that is something that can be done, but it has to be done with some support, and it has to be started by a congressional delegation. So I've talked to Kasai yesterday, and he said what we need to do as a commission is start with a letter to the three representatives, and then they can go from there trying to get this to happen. And he said now's a good time because of the consideration of the Farm Bill. They're looking at our not refunding, but funding again some of the PILT and so on. So I would like to just see if you're interested in me. I don't really want to have a motion of approval or anything like that, but I would be willing to work at developing a letter, and we could kind of, I think it's important that we keep that money out. The money originally goes for helping counties, but then when the county can't spend it, it just goes back, and I don't think that's right. I think it should go where it can help somebody else. So that's kind of just, I want your feedback on whether you think it's even worth pursuing.
So you're looking for a yes or a no?
Should I try and develop that letter? What do you think?
More funding in from people that.
Yeah, when they turn that money back from some county in Ohio that can't use it, then we should be able to redirect it to Pennington County to help us, or Lawrence County or whatever, for our project. And so that's where I'm heading with it. And, then I would put it on the agenda. But I don't want to go,
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'll work on that letter then.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Any other committee reports?
I can just take about 30 seconds and tell you that I was at a deal last night, a going away party for Colonel Hiss, who is the Vice Wing Commander at Ellsworth. He and his wife Ann are moving to Charlottesville, Virginia, and he is going to be an instructor in the University of Virginia in military affairs.
Cool.
Good. Items from the public.
Rapid City Journal, got anything to say?
And do we need a motion for executive session?
Yes, sir, and I'll make that motion. Contractual personnel.
Is there a second?
Second.
No, don't.
You don't want to
All in
go.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We're in executive session.